Chapter 1071. Qin Guang knew that no matter how unhappy those who disliked him were, they would walk into the cinema sooner or later. But they would not be satisfied with just attacking him as a person. The most likely target was still the movie. Qin Guang wanted to become an actor recognized by the world. If those people wanted to destroy his unrealistic dream, the best way was to attack his work. They would also think, I'm just going into the cinema alone, I won't be able to contribute much to the box office, so it doesn't matter if I go and watch. More and more people would walk into the cinema with this kind of thinking, which was actually a standard negative marketing idea. But these people who walked into the cinema with a nitpicking attitude would fall into Qin Guang's trap. If he really sat in the cinema for 2 hours, when he walked out, his mentality would change. That was Qin Guang's original plan, but he did not expect that he would go too far. The voices of resistance would be too loud, and the ideology would be too concentrated, resulting in such an awkward scene at the premiere. The premiere was like this, and he estimated that the other cinemas, which had a pitiful 0.67% screening rate, would not be much better. Forget it. Although this would indeed affect the subsequent development of the entire plan, it was like a spring. The more aggrieved and miserable it was today, the more violent the rebound would be when it hit the bottom. Qin Guang forced himself to comfort himself. While his mind was running wild, the reporter from the Sunshine Man finally rushed over after finishing his interview. After all, Qin Guang was notorious. The less courageous reporters picked up their cameras and pointed them at the platform of women from afar. The more courageous reporters, who wanted to dig out more in-depth information, rushed directly to the bottom of the stage, raised their microphones at Qin Guang from afar, and shouted loudly, "Mr. Qin from China, are you satisfied with your grand premiere? Mr. Qin, where did you find this red carpet? It's so beautiful, it's even more spacious than the Los Angeles Lakers court. Do you still think you can win the Oscar for Best Actor? We really want to know what kind of confidence you have that gives you the courage to say such a thing. Mr. Qin, although the American people have always been known for their tolerance, don't you think you're being a little too arrogant? How do you feel right now, facing such a comical premiere? Mr. Qin, we heard that you are going to publish a book related to performing arts. We really want to know where you learned performing arts. Your Yinjing Film Academy? Or the Central Academy of Drama? Or is it like what is written in your Chinese martial arts novels, where you learn from a white-bearded old man who lives in seclusion in the mountains?" When these reporters asked such questions, they did not expect Qin Guang to answer at all. They did not follow the order of a normal reporter's interview. Instead, they asked him one after another like a barrage of cannons. It looked like an interview, but it was actually crazy sarcasm. Halfway through their noisy questioning, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. What a joke. This has completely overturned my impression of the Chinese. That's right. Fang Tianyu's face was livid. If Lu Xiaoyang had not held him back, he would have rushed up to beat them up. Fang Tianyu turned around and glared at Lu Xiaoyang. *CK, aren't you angry? Lu Xiaoyang shrugged and quietly took out a cotton ball from his ear. I didn't even hear what they were saying. The two of them looked at Qin Guang, who was facing everyone's criticism. At that moment, even in the face of thousands of mockery, his expression did not change. He looked at the group of clowns in the audience with a smile. He even raised his hand and pressed it down. You have too many questions, so I won't answer them one by one. I will only say one thing. If you are just standing outside the theater and scolding me, then I will pretend that I didn't hear anything. If you really hate me so much, then go to the cinema and watch my movie first. Then you can come and scold my movie and my people. This is much more interesting than scratching an itch like you guys are doing now. Also, I know you don't want to contribute to the box office. It's okay. I will personally announce that all the tickets for women at the Wuxia Theater in Hollywood are free. I will buy out all the tickets for you. How about that? The reporters had never encountered such an unruly person who laughed at them, so they looked at each other in dismay. Don't expect us to watch your lousy movie even if you pay for it. That's right. Let's go, clowns. The reporters saw that Qin Guang was immune to their mockery and felt a little bored. They cursed and turned around to leave. Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu were stunned by Qin Guang's generosity. He was indeed the boss. He was so strong. The two of them moved closer to Qin Guang and touched his shoulder. Boss, how did you hold back? Qin Guang said, Huh? What did you say? He picked his ear as he spoke. Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu were confused. Boss, didn't you hear anything? Did you put something in your ear? Qin Guang smiled mysteriously. You guys are so naive. I told you I'm a martial arts master. I used my internal energy to block my hearing just now. I couldn't even hear thunder. The two of them, impressive. Really impressive. William Jones, who was watching from a distance, had a smug smile on his face. William, we should go in. Stop watching this clown's performance. It's a waste of time. No. Sharon, this is interesting. It's even more interesting than me winning the Best Actor award in Berlin. I don't want to agree with you, but it's really interesting. Don't you think he's too pitiful? Emma, if he gets what he wants, we'll be the pitiful ones. He reminds me of Don Quixote by Cervantes. William Jones said, No, Emma, he's just as funny as Don Quixote, but he's not as great as Don Quixote. Yo, look, Mr. Joshtan is going over. While the few of them were chattering, Donald Joshtan, wearing a tuxedo, twisted his fat body and walked nimbly to the booth of women. He fulfilled his previous promise, and really pulled back the reporters who were just about to disperse. He was immersed in the pleasure of dealing the finishing blow and looked at Chen Guang from afar. He thought to himself, I've said it before. I'll humiliate you. I'm going to tell everyone what you said that day in front of me, word for word. Will it be my honor to give you screening hall 14? You want me to witness the birth of a new era? I've never seen such a shameless person. In a sense, you do represent a new era. There shouldn't be anyone more shameless than you in the history of movies. This old man is showing off again. Boss, what should we do now? Lu Xiaoyang stood behind Chen Guang and asked nervously. Lu Xiaoyang knew how despicable Donald was. The boss could ignore the reporters and onlookers, but not Donald Joshtan. If he completely ignored him, Chen Guang's image, which had already fallen to rock bottom, would worsen further. He would be described by the media as an arrogant, rude, and boorish man. However, if he ignored him, who knew if the old man had prepared a new trick to piss people off? It's okay, ignore him. I'm super calm now. Really? I promise no one will die. Fang Tianyu was speechless. Lu Xiaoyang said, Why don't we leave? There's no need to let a villain get what he wants. It's 7:55 now, and the movie will start in 5 minutes. As the three of them chatted, Donald walked closer and closer. Suddenly, the reporters behind Donald started a commotion. The crowd gradually stopped in their tracks. More and more people turned their attention to the other side of the square. They were looking at the wide red carpet on the side of the stage of women. What are these people doing here? Oh my God. I didn't hear that they were coming. Is this a Christmas surprise? Donald, who was in the crowd, also stopped in his tracks. He turned his head and looked into the distance, following the gaze of the others. His mouth was wide open and his face was full of confusion. Chen Guang and the others, who were mentally prepared to run away or stand there and be bombarded by Donald, also turned their heads to look at the end of the red carpet. After a brief moment of being stunned, Chen Guang suddenly grinned when he saw the black man who was walking in front of the crowd and waving at him from afar. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that in his most embarrassing and difficult time, a brother he had never considered would actually appear out of nowhere and become his savior. It was Bonner Pierce, the top coach in the North American boxing world, a veteran big shot. Behind him, walking all the way from the red carpet, were Mayweather, Mouthy Connor, John Cena, Big Brother Shio, and other top fighters who were active in WWE, mixed martial arts, or professional boxing. They were world-class boxing superstars with tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of appearance fees. Although they were not as well known as entertainment stars, their fame and aura were not inferior to those in the entertainment industry. In fact, they were even better. Because their fans were even more fanatical. It was evident from the incomparably fanatical and crazy expressions of the reporters who had originally planned to laugh at him. Chen Guang suddenly realized that he had been too immersed in his own world and writing a book. He had only been thinking of ways to make a name for himself in the entertainment industry. Why didn't I think of it earlier? I could actually start from other avenues. Damn it, luckily Black Bro saved me. He didn't know how much he had done for him, but to be able to pull such a lineup for him at this moment, there was really no one else who could match his friendship. Donald stood in the crowd in a daze, his mind blank. Am I seeing things? Is there an international boxing all-star match in Los Angeles today? What are these lunatics doing here? Did they go to the wrong set and walk the wrong red carpet? In terms of fame, perhaps these boxing kings might not be as famous as movie stars or singers, but in terms of personal income and fanaticism of their fans, Mouthy Connor and the others were really enough to catch up to a few celebrities. The reporters had completely lost control and completely forgot their original purpose. They screamed and madly rushed toward the boxing all-star lineup led by Bonner Pierce. They ran madly, the spears in their hands flashing crazily. Chapter 1072. Further away, more than half of the fans who had been crowding around the stage of The Sunshine Man, which had just ended, had come out and were rushing over to the stage. In the United States, which advocated the philosophy of the strong, fighting superstars, had an unimaginably large audience. In another corner, the halfway through the premiere of July in Florence, was even more awkward. The stars who were enjoying the attention and spotlight of countless fans suddenly realized that more than half of the people in front of them had run away. Well, this was not the most awkward thing. The most awkward thing was that at the booth of Sunshine, several stars who were supposed to be in the theater for the premiere were screaming and rushing over like ordinary fans. Well, it was the same for July. Stars would also worship stars, especially superstars who crossed industries. Just like how Kobe and Messi appreciated each other, and how Jordan and Jackson regretted not meeting each other earlier. If it was just one or two fighting superstars, it probably wouldn't have caused such a sensation. However, the lineup behind Bonner Pierce was too luxurious. It included boxing champions from all major fighting fields, from WWE to K1, and from the lightweight to heavyweight boxing champions. There were at least 50 or 60 people, and each of them was very important. To each their own, there was bound to be one that suited you. This group of people together, according to their net worth, was like a moving $100 billion. The smile on Ben Affleck's face froze like cold water splashed into a pile of snow in winter. Donald's shoulder was bumped several times by the passing reporters, and he almost fell to the ground. He shouted in exasperation, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" On the other side, William Jones struggled to pull the young man next to him, the second male lead of Sunshine. "Baluan, are you crazy? Calm down. Calm down. This is our premiere." The onlookers had already rushed to the periphery of the fighting all-star lineup. Fortunately, these people had more or less brought bodyguards. The strong bodyguards formed a line hand in hand, forming a human wall that blocked all the reporters and the crowd outside. The fast-moving onlookers screamed as they pulled out their phones and clicked on the all-star lineup. They couldn't wait to share the scene in front of them on their social networks. "Elena, look who I ran into. Look at what kind of people they are. Oh my God. I'm so happy that I'm going crazy. Son. Come to the plaza outside the Wuxia Theater in Hollywood. Your favorite verbal cannon, Connor, is here." And so on and so forth. The super luxurious all-star lineup drove everyone into a frenzy. The smile on Qin Guang's face became brighter and brighter. "Brother, you're the best. You've saved my life. How proud." The comfort in his heart wasn't any worse than the old man's comfort when he was in the realm of true martial arts and held the position of martial saint in his hands. At that moment, only the employees of the Qingguang group remained calm. The reason was very simple. They were extremely puzzled. We didn't contact these big shots? If I'm not wrong, any one of the all-star lineup should have an appearance fee of more than $500,000. That's a moving appearance fee of $25 million. We don't have such an exaggerated budget for a premiere, right? Lu Xiaoyang muttered to himself, D***MN. What kind of luxurious lineup is this? An all-star lineup of WWE, UFC, and professional boxing? Boss, is today Muhammad Ali's anniversary? Or did these brothers come to the wrong place? Are they next door? Fang Tianyu nodded vigorously. That's right, that must be it. The other side's budget is through the roof. I've finally seen a tycoon who's more prodigal than you, boss. Qin Guang gave the two of them a kick each. Go to hell, they're all on the same side. Brothers, you're all here because of this old man's face. This face of the old man can be sold for tens of millions of US dollars. Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu were silent. Then they stared intently at Qin Guang's face. No, what we're looking at is not a face. It's a shiny, shiny cash. Boss, your face is going through the roof, isn't it? Your face is definitely gilded. Can't you see who these people are? At this moment, Qin Guang was also puzzled. He had no idea what method Pierce used to convince these people. Forget it, that's not important. What's important is that they're here. Today's situation is under control. No matter what, tonight's news is going to be written. Finally, the internet isn't full of negative reports. Bro Pierce, you helped me a lot. Make the arrangements immediately. Scatter flowers. Take pictures. Write a press release. Give out books to everyone. That's right, give out books. We can't afford it if we don't give out money. Qin Guang waved his hand and instructed as he walked to the center of the stage to welcome Bonner Pierce with a smile. The two approached each other and gave each other a bear hug. Qin Guang whispered into the black man's ear, "Mr. Pierce, how did you do it? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Bonner Pierce smiled and patted Qin Guang's back. "It's simple. I told them that you're the world's strongest fighting king, no matter in which field. They weren't convinced at first. Then I showed them the video of you testing the machine at my villa. They were all shocked. Then I told them that you didn't even use your full strength at that time. They were even more shocked. I told them that if they were willing to help you, you would teach them how to use force. As for why I didn't tell you in advance, don't you feel surprised? How is it? Exciting, right? Qin Guang nodded. Pierce had grasped these people's weakness. That's why he could fool them. At their level, what they lacked was not money but power. More powerful power. It was more precious than gold. Of course, Pierce's identity was also very important. He was a big shot in the North American boxing world and a top boxing coach with a wide range of contacts. Only his words were credible. Everyone in the fighting and boxing world knew what kind of person Bonner Pierce was. He would never joke about his personal credibility. If it were anyone else, there would be people in the world who could beat 10 of you. They would probably be pressed to the ground by Connor and the others and repeatedly rubbed until their parents couldn't recognize them. Qin Guang was very grateful. He patted Bonner's back tacitly. Thank you. Mr. Pierce, you've helped me a lot. So exciting. My heart almost stopped beating. Bonner Pierce smiled. Actually, I heard that you played a retired boxer in your movie. I'm very sorry that I didn't get to see you fight professionally. It was a very rare experience to see you play a boxer in a movie. I still remember the first time we met. You were performing Ali's butterfly moves in the coffee shop. I'll never forget that scene for the rest of my life. Although you're Asian, I think you look more like Ali than Will Smith. Thank you for your encouragement. You're almost the first American to truly recognize my acting skills. Don't be discouraged. When Will Smith wanted to play Ali, we laughed at him like crazy. You're being doubted now because people don't understand you. You're always challenging different fields. I like your constant challenging of the impossible. You're a very different Wuxia person. Alright, we've been hugging each other for too long. Let's go and welcome our other friends. Otherwise, people will think we have some special relationship. Okay. Qin Guang turned around and greeted the many big men warmly. Among them were a few acquaintances he had met at Pierce's house. Meeting them again now was quite a unique feeling. After all the martial arts superstars stood on the stage one after another, Qin Guang cupped his hands. Everyone, thank you. Thank you. Qin Guang had originally planned to express his gratitude to these martial arts big shots excitedly. However, since Pierce had already bragged about his abilities, he could not let down the title of the world's strongest martial artist. He had to show the demeanor of a Wuxia master. Many of the martial arts big shots did not stand on ceremony with him. One by one they learned his Wuxia etiquette and cupped their hands. Qin Guang's face was filled with a big smile. No matter who it was, even if it was a few beggars at this time, it would be a life-saving grace to him. What's more, these people were extremely popular. What about a top big shot? Although in terms of real martial arts, these people combined might not even be enough to fill the gaps between Qin Guang's teeth. However, what he needed now was famous reinforcements, not how good they were at fighting. He was very satisfied with the current show's effect. Very satisfied. There was only one flaw. Bonner Pierce, that black bro, should have informed him earlier. His little heart was scared out of its wits. Qin Guang, who was standing in the crowd, cast his gaze to the back of the crowd below the stage. There stood Donald Joshtan alone. The old man's face turned green and white. Even a blind man could see how embarrassed he was. He had already asked around in the entertainment industry. Indeed, there was no heavyweight who had accepted the invitation of women. Since yesterday he had been waiting to see today's joke. However, he did not expect that even though there was no one from the entertainment industry, the big shots in the martial arts and martial arts circles who had come were not any less influential than the entertainment industry. Damn it. This group of well-developed but simple-minded idiots. You will ruin the movie. Do you think you're helping him? You'll become the sinners of the entire movie industry. You'll be deserted by everyone. Donald waved his hand fiercely and turned to leave. There was nothing he could do. Qin Guang cast his gaze to a place further away. It was William Jones and the others who had been so proud of themselves. They had finally calmed down their friend, who was about to lose control of his emotions. The group of people turned around and walked into the cinema dejectedly. At this moment, the most embarrassed people were probably the crew of July and Florence, who were still walking the red carpet. The smile on Ben Affleck's face had already completely frozen on the spot, and the other main creative team and premier guests around him were not much better. Although there were still some hardcore fans in the crowd and a few media reporters who had not left, who knew what they would write when they went back. The security guards who had been hired to maintain order on the rather luxuriously decorated stage and the edge of the red carpet looked bored. There were only a few people in front of them. The people of July finally understood a little of what Qin Guang was feeling. It felt as if they were dressed up and confidently appeared on stage, but the audience booed. Damn clowns, a bunch of clowns. They must have taken money from the Chinese people. They are a disgrace to the upper class. A disgrace. Bent Affolet spat heavily on the red carpet beside him. The other people of July nodded. They did not think about how awkward it would be for Qin Guang to be targeted like this. They only thought that they were unhappy and wronged. Forget it, let's go in. The premiere is over. Our premiere is over. Bent sighed. He knew that cursing would not help. At this moment, another group of people appeared at the end of the red carpet for women. Chapter 1073. Qin Guang looked over from afar. He was stunned at first, then overjoyed. It's Tang Ying. Why is she here? Of course, if it was just Tang Ying, Qin Guang would be happy but not happy. However, there were many silver-haired old men beside Tang Ying. Although Qin Guang did not know these people, judging from the way they walked, he subconsciously felt that they should be of high status. Pierce, who was behind Qin Guang, immediately identified the person and answered Qin Guang's doubts. Strange, why is the president of Moreland's Medical College here? Qin Guang quietly turned his head. Mr. Pierce, do you know them? Pierce nodded vigorously. Of course, the president of Moreland's Medical College is the most famous sports medicine expert in the United States. I also know the one beside him, the best oncologist in the United States. Oh, and Mr. Byron, the president of another medical college, the best brain doctor in the world. If you want to hire him for surgery, no amount of American dollars will move him. He must be happy. Oh my God. As a top boxing coach, Bonner Pierce obviously had a deep understanding of the European and American medical community. He could recognize about half of the dozen old men and women beside Tang Ying. Although he could not recognize the other half, they should be of the same level in the medical community. What are these people doing here? While Bonner was thinking about this, Qin Guang had already taken the lead to greet them. He and Tang Ying gave each other a big hug in accordance with the American etiquette. Bonner suddenly realized that they were all on Qin Guang's side, just like him. Sister Tang Ying, what's going on? I heard that you're about to embarrass yourself. We just settled the matter of the Joint Research Institute a couple of days ago. Coincidentally, my supervisor and I are attending a medical conference in Los Angeles. It's very close, so I was thinking of inviting them over to watch a movie. You have to be more humble and act like a junior. There are 2 winners of the Nobel Prize in Medicine among them. Qin Guang's expression instantly brightened. A Nobel Prize winner was already worthy of respect, let alone a Nobel Prize in medicine that saved lives. Although these old gentlemen were not as famous as the Brawl Kings, they were more influential. It can't be that simple, right? How did you convince them? Don't they know I'm stinking? I showed them the video of you competing in the World Arm Wrestling competition. I also told them that you are a senior official of China and no one can force you to do anything. If we want you to cooperate with us, we have to return the favor first. Besides, these old pedants don't really care about the gossip in the entertainment industry. Qin Guang immediately understood. F***ck, you're selling my genes just like that. Forget it, this is not important. In any case, this old man no longer has to worry about being used as a guinea pig. Tang Ying is right. If you want to obtain this old man's essence, Pui genes, then you have to make this old man happy first. Will there be high-frequency gene harvesting in the future? I'm afraid my body won't be able to keep up. Scram. Dream on. One harvest is enough to last you for a few months, and I'm the only one harvesting it. Do you hear me? Okay. We've been hugging for too long. Qin Guang quickly let go of Tang Ying and greeted the group of old men and women behind him. They shook hands and chatted cordially. After greeting everyone, Qin Guang felt a chill down his spine. F***ck, I should avoid making friends with people in the medical field in the future. I feel like they're looking at me like I'm a specimen soaked in formalin. The media reporters and spotlights were still flashing non-stop. Unlike Qin Guang's ignorance, the well-informed media immediately recognized the principal and 2 other Nobel Prize winners. The reporters almost went crazy. Just what kind of groundbreaking movie premiere did we just get to witness? Although the guest had almost nothing to do with the movie, this was a bit too much. Even our comrade Ao Guanhai had to make an appointment to meet these big shots in the medical field. They actually gathered together to attend the premiere of a Wuxia movie. At this time, the countdown had reached 7:58, 2 minutes before the movie premiere. The superstars of the fighting and boxing world had already been led inside by the staff of the Qingguang group. On the stage it was the medical giants who appeared. But this was not the end. Another group of people appeared. Qingguang continued to look up. There were another 10 people, tall and short, fat and thin, ranging from middle-aged to old. The people who came were people he had defeated before. The world's top pianist, Raven Holland, the beautiful Portuguese pianist, Christina, the French piano master, Pires, the American piano master who had also lost to him, and many others he did not know at all. Finally, a big shot who was related to the entertainment industry but not the movie industry had appeared. Qingguang did not expect that these people who had lost to him in the past would stand up for him with such a clear attitude when he was deserted by the whole world. This was all a pleasant surprise. You guys gave me face today, but in fact you guys recognized me as a person. If not for today's special occasion, Qingguang would not have thought that he would be so popular. However, this was not the end. Behind the big shots of the piano world, another dense group of people appeared. Qingguang clenched his fists, showing that he was stunned. Dominic Diesel walked at the front, followed by Pan Junyao from Thailand, Speed from the Rainforest from Brazil, Frank from Detroit, and so on. 6 of the top 10 underground car kings who had a duel with Qingguang had come. There were 3 or 4 people beside them. They seemed to be keeping a low profile beside the kings of the underground racing world, but the knowledgeable reporters recognized them at a glance. They were this year's newly crowned F1 champion Hamilton, the WRC rally champion Beralt, and the Dakar rally champion Mendeleev. The big shots of the racing world had also come to support Qingguang. Behind them, there was a group of middle-aged men and women in uniforms. Qingguang looked at their uniforms and the familiar faces walking at the front and recognized them. They were the big shots of the civil aviation world. The CEOs of several civil aviation groups around the world. Behind this group of big shots in uniforms, there was a group of young and old men and women. Qingguang also remembered them. They were the big shots of the global linguistics world who had dealt with him at the World Language Conference and ended up parting on bad terms. He thought that he would not have to deal with them again, but he did not expect them to come quietly. Obviously, the monograph he wrote later had a great impact on them. Although because of their age and skin color, these people were not willing to express their recognition, gratitude, and appreciation on social media, they were still grateful and recognized his great contribution in linguistics. This was not the end. Behind this group of language experts and scholars, there was a group of young people. The young people obviously did not expect that there would be such a big scene today. They were a little reserved under the cameras and flashes of the reporters, and their footsteps on the red carpet were slightly shaky. Qingguang could see that they seemed to be retreating. They seemed to regret coming here today. They were not very confident. Therefore, Qingguang directly stepped over everyone who was walking over and waved at these young people from afar. The youngsters' spirits were immediately lifted, and they followed closely behind the linguists. These young people were the world's top Dota players in America at this time. Comrade Mao Yongren, Babiv, RTZ and so on. Although they were not famous among ordinary people, they were extremely popular among the young people, especially in the Dota player circle. On the other side, many young people ran under the stage of July. Both sides were their idols, and after weighing the two they still felt that they liked esports more. In just a few minutes, the originally incomparably shabby premiere of Women had become a dazzling scene. Although these celebrities had almost nothing to do with the movie, all the guests added up, whether it was the weight or the grandeur, it was not inferior to the opening ceremony of Paris Fashion Week. This kind of extravagance was more than enough to support a mere movie premiere. Qingguang looked calm on the surface, but he was already laughing in his heart. The old man's years of doing good deeds had not been in vain after all. There were still many people in this world who recognized him. The brains of the movie's main cast and guests had already crashed. William Jones and the others sitting in the cinema were not much better. Donald, who had simply run straight home, was even more exasperated. He had seen everything through the photos and videos sent by the theater staff. Although the premiere at his Hollywood Huaxia theater was of a higher level in a sense, it also made him proud. But that was not what he wanted. Damn it. Donald's heart was filled with indescribable regret. If he had known this would happen, he would not have given Women such a large venue. He should have given him a small corner. Now he had gone for wool and come home shorn. Instead, he had made this shameless Chinese proud. Every time Women had a heavyweight guest, it was a hard slap to the faces of Donald and the other filmmakers. This meant that the entire movie industry had disregarded everything and joined forces to boycott Qingguang's movie, but they had suffered a heavy blow. In order to organize a good premiere, How much did Qin Guang spend? A few $100 million US? No wonder he had always been so confident. It turned out that he had already prepared for this. That damn despicable person. Jenny, where are you? Bring me the heart medicine. Sir, Madam went out with her friends from the community service station 5 minutes ago. She said that she was going to participate in a charity event. Your medicine is with me. The old maid said respectfully and took out a medicine bottle from her pocket. Chapter 1074. Donald lost control of his emotions and smashed his phone on the floor. I told her to just stay at home. Why did she have to participate in that damn community service? She's wasting her life. Sir, do I need to pass on your message to Madam? No. I was just joking. Please don't tell Jenny. After the maid left in a seemingly respectful manner but was actually trying to hold back her laughter, Donald sighed again. He thought of his wife who was fierce but did not like to manage the family's affairs. She was an extremely devout believer of the religion and only indulged in community activities. He felt another headache coming on. Guys, hurry up. It's almost time, Mrs. Josh Tan. We've been waiting for you for too long. I'm sorry, everyone. I just had a phone call with my son in Boston. Oh yeah, what are we going to do today? Watch a movie. Huh? Movie? No, I hate movies. My old man only knows how to show movies and my stupid son only knows how to make movies. I get a headache whenever I hear the word, movie. No. This is a movie from China. Also, Mrs. Josh Tan, I have to tell you a piece of good news. Your husband, Mr. Josh Tan, wants this movie to have no audience at all. Recently, he has been going around asking his friends to boycott this movie. Really? Then why should we help him? Actually, it's my niece's request. She feels that the Chinese man is too pitiful. Jenny Josh Tan said, alright, since it's a movie that even my husband wants to boycott, then I really want to watch it. If Donald, who was sulking at home until he had a heart attack, knew that the community service that his precious wife, Jenny, participated in was actually to watch women, he would probably pass out from anger. At 8:05 p.m., the world premiere of Women finally started after a delay of 5 minutes after a few twists and turns. The VIPs who followed did not stand on the red carpet or the stage for long for the media. Other than the Pierce Squad and the Pianist Squad, who came first, the VIPs who came later did not have stage fright but did not have much interest in being celebrities on the runway. Time did not allow for it either. They just took a few simple photos for the media and then went into the cinema one after another. All the uninvited guests had just taken their seats, and the film had already begun, when Madame Josh Tan and her friends from the community service station arrived, led by the German girl and her aunt. Because of Qin Guang's promise, Screening Hall 14 skipped the process of checking the tickets. However many people from the community came, they would be allowed in and everyone would be given a copy of the first volume of World Faction. Screening Hall 14, which could only accommodate 150 people, was filled to the brim. Including everyone, there were exactly 150 people. As for the reporters who changed their minds and wanted to attend the premiere, they were stopped outside by Qin Guang. The reason was simple. Although he used the face fruit to turn the tables at the crucial moment, this was only the first step in his counterattack. From now on, everything he did had to be more purposeful. Letting the reporters in today seemed like a good idea, but in fact there was great potential danger. The preconceived and unscrupulous media personnel were harder to convert than the ordinary audience. Although there would definitely be some people who would become true fans of the movie, there would definitely be people who would be stubborn or greedy. Tomorrow they would still criticize women with their brilliant writing. However, Qin Guang only needed to let the media people report on the premiere, and that was enough positive publicity. As for the real standard of the movie, there was no need for them to tell him for now. Even if they would lose part of the tap water, they would be able to avoid negative news first. The benefits of tap water were not as big as the disadvantages of the brainless haters. Not to mention the media people who were born with crooked butts. With his current popularity, the media people who came out of the cinema to write positive reports would be regarded as being paid to do things, but the media people who wrote negative reports would be regarded as having the conscience of the industry. Although this was unavoidable, there was no need to let them in since it was the world's first premiere, which was held 12 hours earlier than in China. Tomorrow the situation at the Los Angeles premiere would be seen by all the major media, but only a few people went to watch it, and the media would not say anything about it. The international friends of Demi would definitely be very curious and drive them to the cinema to find out what was going on. What exactly was this super bad movie that was going to be splattered all over the world? Qin Guang calculated in his heart and determined that the benefits of rejecting the media first outweighed the disadvantages by 5%. That's right, it was that precise. As for the ordinary audiences that the German girl tricked from the community service station, Qin Guang did not particularly care about how much tap water these people could produce. If the number of people did not reach a certain level, it would seem insignificant. Standing at the entrance of the theater and listening to the prelude of the music, Qin Guang finally relaxed and let out a long breath when everything was on track. Lu Xiaoyang, who was standing next to him, saw this and asked, "Boss, now is not the time to rest, right? Although the premiere is full, the attendance at other places tonight won't be that high, right? Although we have a lot of big names helping us, it still needs time to ferment if we want to create a sensation on social media. We won't be able to make it in time for the 10:30 public screening, and there's no hope for the midnight screening after 12 o'clock. If we want to turn the attendance around, we'll have to wait until tomorrow at the earliest, right?" Qin Guang smiled and waved his hand. "It doesn't matter. Take your time. Everything is under control." Lu Xiaoyang looked at his confident smile and did not know what to say. Forget it, the boss has always been like this. But then again, the situation today was miraculously turned around. Although he did not do anything, didn't this mean that the boss was the son of Providence? He won by lying down. The boss was not only capable, but his luck was also heaven-defying. He should be more confident. If he was not confident, then shouldn't the rest of us hang ourselves? Lu Xiaoyang could not understand. In fact, the moment Theater 14 was full, Qin Guang had completely foreseen the situation in the next few days. Outside the theater, the reporters had not left yet. Inside the theater, some of the crew members who had just finished the premiere had not left yet. There were also some big names in the media circle who had attended other movie premieres, and they were also watching with great interest. Although they did not attend the premiere of Women, if they could get first-hand dirt from the audience, it would be an important report that could expand their influence. The crowd stood in groups of 2s and 3s in the theater aisle, whispering to each other. "It's 8:25 now. I bet $10 that someone will come out of Theater 14 within 5 minutes. I bet $100. 10 minutes. I bet $1,000. 5 minutes. Mr. Diaz, what do you think? You guys bet yourselves. I'm not interested. I'm a little sleepy and I'm going to the hotel to rest. Markov, say hello to the Dean of Wesley College for me." "No problem, but I have to wait for a while." "What? Are you worried that this movie from Wuxia will affect you? Don't joke around. You are not in the same genre. You don't have to care about them." No, Cameron. I got Theater 7 from them. I don't know why, but I feel a little uneasy." "Do whatever you want." The big shots in the media world didn't have the same worries as the film director. Now that everyone knew about the amazing scene at the premiere of Women, they also knew what kind of people were sitting in the number 14 screening hall. Apart from the dozens of old men and women in the community, the other guests were important enough to support a Dior, Louis Vuitton, or Bentley's global new product launch. They were surprised by the Chinese's unconventional approach. Since the people in the entertainment circle were boycotting him, he found guests from other places, and they were even more important. They were also happy that they finally had a new topic to write about. When the important guests left in advance, the big names in the media circle, would be able to directly interview them in the theater and let them express their feelings. This was a good thing for the new reporters who were stuck outside but could not get it. Some people were thinking about their position, wondering if they should change their position and speak for Women and Qin Guang. At the same time, there were also people pondering how they should ask questions to guide the interviewee's thoughts so that the interviewee would fall into a trap and say something that could be taken out of context to attack Qin Guang. If they could dig out some unfavorable information from the F1 champion, the WRC champion, and the superstars, they could use it to make a big article. Even the guests who had received Qin Guang's USD couldn't stand his movie. Thinking about it, was there anything worse than this? No one in the media thought that the guests of Women would appear for free. They silently estimated the appearance fee that Qin Guang could pay. Except for the big names in the medical circle whose value could not be accurately estimated, especially the 2 Nobel Prize winners, the appearance fee of the others would probably add up to hundreds of millions of USD, right? Not to mention this kind of movie premiere, which had its own negative impact on one's personal image. Stupid Chinese. Do you think you can control everything with money? Do you think you can turn the tables by finding some famous people? Don't you know that the higher the status of the people you find and the more important they are, the harder it is to control their mouths? Don't you know that an ordinary person saying that your movie is not good 10,000 times is not as good as a simple word, boring, thrown by an authority in any field? Time passed bit by bit. In the aisles of the theater, people who chose to watch other movies came and went. The main production team of some movies could not stand the harassment of fans along the way and quietly retreated, but the big names in the media circle did not waver. Gradually, they found that the situation was a little wrong. Half an hour passed and no one came out of Theater 14. An hour passed and still no one came out. Chapter 1075. Some people tried to sneak up to the door of Screening Hall 14 to see what was going on, but they were stopped by countless burly bodyguards. What the hell, why didn't anyone leave early? How would I know? Did the Wuxia people put superglue on their chairs? Did they stick their butts on it? It's not impossible. An hour and a half later. I'm already planning to write a script. An unprecedented scandal in the history of the film industry. Crazy Wuxia tycoons put their guests under house arrest in the screening hall to let people finish watching their trashy movie. What do you think of my title? It's pretty good, but you're too slow. I've already written it and the meaning is similar to yours. I'll send it to the chief editor after the premiere. Can you two stop joking around? Would you dare to put a Nobel Prize winner under house arrest even if you had 10 guts? And the CEOs of several airline companies around the world? Oh, and Big Show, Mouthy Connor, John Sinon, and Hamilton? What else? Can you give us a more reasonable explanation? Qin Guang's movie is especially good? How can these big shots whose time is like gold be reluctant to leave? That's ridiculous. As far as I know, many guests at premieres often just go through the motions at the beginning and leave very quickly. They can't finish watching the movie in the first place. This is the established rule in the industry. It's too hard to understand why these big shots would sit in the theater for 2 hours. Do you know how much Mouthy Connor gets to attend a fashion brand launch that only lasts for half an hour? $800,000. But they really haven't come out yet. Finally, a full 2 hours passed. The door of Screening Hall 14 opened with a loud bang. There was no scene that the reporters and the main producers of the other movies had imagined, and no one rushed out of the door. Everyone thought that the audience who was locked inside would flee in panic. Now they realized that they were wrong. The first to walk out were the big shots of the medical world. Each of them held a book in their hands and looked dazed. The atmosphere was extremely solemn. No one communicated with each other, nor did they whisper. They just frowned and fell into deep thought. Behind the big shots of the medical world were linguists and pianists. These people also seemed to be possessed. All of them were silent and had a book in their hands. The big shots of the media circle pounced on them in a frenzy. Mr. Neuer, may I ask if your personal freedom is restricted in the theater? Mr. Velan, how do you feel about this movie? Do you think Qin Guang's performance in the movie is worthy of an actor? Countless questions were fired from the mouths of the big shots in the media circle towards the big shots in the audience. Fortunately, the bodyguards brought by the fighting superstars were very strong. They formed 2 human walls and blocked all the reporters outside. Of course, these were all giants in the academic world. Unlike ordinary celebrities, the reporters did not dare to be as impulsive as they were to entertainment figures. But no one answered their question. It was as if they had lost their minds and were completely immersed in their own world, not paying attention to what was happening outside. The reporters' punches all hit the air and they couldn't help but look at each other. What happened in the theater? This doesn't make sense, right? Even if it was a normal person after watching a movie, they would more or less say something when asked by others. What was going on with them now? Could it be that the Wuxia people had drugged the theater and made everyone faint for 2 hours? That's even more ridiculous. This will land him in jail for a long time. What kind of trick did he use? A mysterious power from the East? Everyone in the theater was hypnotized? Finally, when some young faces appeared at the back of the crowd, the reporters and the other film staff watching the situation saw some different expressions. These young esports players were very excited and excited. Behind the esports players were many big names in the martial arts circle. They were even more excited than the esports players. Mr. Sinon, may I ask if this movie? It's amazing. It's incomparable. I can't find any words to describe how perfect it is. I swear I've never seen such a perfect performance in my life. No, it can't even be called a performance anymore. Mr. Chin showed us the whole world. By the way, if you have the chance, I suggest you buy his book. It's the one in my hand. Before the reporter could finish his question, Sinon had already interrupted him and waved the first volume of World Faction in his hand. Mr. Sinon, what happened to the movie? The reporters continued to ask, unwilling to give up. The strong Sinon had a mischievous smile on his face. He blinked and said, "Why are you asking me? Can't you afford to pay for a movie ticket? Mr. Damon from the Washington Post. Sorry, my mind is full of movies now. I can't wait to go back to the hotel and find a quiet place to read Mr. Chen's book. Sorry, I have to go. Sinan left quickly after saying that, even though the person who asked him was actually an acquaintance of his in the media circle. Further ahead, young esports players were also being interviewed. They were 10 times more excited than John Sinan. The reporters, who were trying to dig out some dirt from these people, found that they couldn't find an entry point to discredit the movie from the mouths of the brainless fans who were so excited that they were talking incoherently about Chen Guang's movie. Perfect. It's never been so perfect. Chen Guang is the real best actor. I swear. Mao Yongren said, I'm proud that I have the same skin color and race as him. Don't ask me anything and I don't want to talk to anyone. I've never liked movies, but tonight I realized how shallow I am. You really should buy tickets to go to the cinema, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. The reporters didn't expect such a scene at all. The people who came out of the screening hall were acting so strangely. Did you mistakenly enter the legendary Amway group and get lectured? You guys are very abnormal. The reporters had seen classic movies with good reputation in box office, but they had never seen such a good movie that could make celebrities shamelessly flatter it without any bottom line. For a person like Sinan, even if he was paid, he couldn't brag about a bad movie like this. Otherwise, his personal image would be greatly damaged. This couldn't be called a good movie at all. This was Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, right? Finally, the old men, women, and aunties from the community service station filed out at the back of the crowd. The reporters thought to themselves, we may not get a fair evaluation from the guests who have been paid, but it should be okay for us to interview the ordinary audience, right? They were doomed to get nothing from the celebrities, so they could only count on the ordinary audience. A noblewoman dressed in luxurious clothes was surrounded by many people from the community service station. The reporters undoubtedly noticed her at the first moment. May I ask this beautiful lady, what do you think of the movie you watched today? The plump lady tidied up her slightly fluffy blonde hair, blushed and said excitedly, I don't know how to express my feelings at this time, but I can't wait to invite everyone in the world to the cinema. Wait a minute, aren't you Mrs. Joshtan? Someone recognized the noblewoman. Jenny Joshtan didn't feel that there was a problem at all. She pointed to her face and said, I am indeed Jenny Joshtan. Is there a problem? Isn't your husband? The reporter was slightly embarrassed. He wanted to say something but stopped. As a well-informed reporter in the industry, he naturally knew that Donald and his wife didn't get along. One was a crazy old man from the Joshtan family who loved movies, and the other was a lady from the aristocratic Edward family who hated movies. Their marriage from the beginning was a huge mistake. This was a taboo in the media circle. Whoever mentioned it would be hated by the petty Donald. Donald is Donald and I am me. But you used to hate movies. The reporter finally couldn't hold it in. Jenny was stunned at first, but she didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled and said, That's right, but that was in the past. From tonight onwards, I've changed my mind. I admit that movies are actually a very good art. In the past, I did hate movies for no reason because I felt that this D*Ned thing first took away my husband and then my son. But today I understand that what I hate is only bad movies. The movies in the past weren't enough to make me feel moved and intoxicated. Now, I can roughly understand why my stubborn husband and equally stubborn son were willing to work so hard for this art. As soon as Madame Joshtan said that, the reporters and the other crew members who were eavesdropping at the side were completely stunned. In a sense, this was probably the highest praise that could possibly appear on Earth. It was only a 2-hour movie, yet Mrs. Joshtan, who hated movies and was said to have been a domestic abuser of Donald for more than 20 years, had a change of heart. The most outrageous thing was that she actually said that all the movies in the past were bad movies, and that was why she hated movies. Do you know how many people you've offended by saying that? You've negated all the works in the history of the human film industry for more than 100 years. All for the sake of today's movie? What's worse is that this movie has completely overshadowed your husband and son's decades of persistence. You're actually starting to understand their dreams? This is an AF*King movie, it's a hallucinogenic drug, right? Finally, the reporter who asked the first question reacted and found another hot topic in time. Madame Joshtan, does this mean that you'll support your husband and son's career in the future? Madame Joshtan thought about it. Not necessarily. Alright, I have to go home. I have a lot to talk to Donald about. After Jenny finished speaking, she turned to look at a huge camera at the side. It was a live broadcast from the Los Angeles Entertainment Channel. She pointed at the camera. Donald, I know you're watching TV. Don't fall asleep before I get home. Look at the book in my hand. You really have to learn it well. I'll also have a good discussion with you about the movies that you want to persevere in. After saying that, Jenny held the first volume of World's Pie in front of the camera. She paused for a few seconds before putting the book away. Then she walked further and further away, surrounded by her fellow community members. Chapter 1076. At that moment, Donald, who was sitting in front of the TV, almost fainted. His hands trembled as he picked up the heart medication and threw it into his mouth. My God. He felt like he had seen a ghost. At the same time, he was considering whether he should run away from home. He was worried that he would not be able to see the sun rise the next day when his wife came back. Meanwhile, the reporters finally saw the cover and title of the book. World School of Performing Arts. Shocking. Alright, the long list of names was too long. Don't mind the details. The book was beautifully packaged, but it did not show the name of the publisher. It was probably a printed product produced by the Wuxia tycoon Qin Guang at his own expense. It could not be considered a publication. But what the hell was with the cover photo? That Wuxia man Qin Guang himself? How shameless must you be to print your own photo on the cover of a book like that? Is this the performing arts monograph that you were talking about? I don't care how you wrote it or what you wrote in it or whether you wrote it yourself. But isn't it a little too shameless to use your own photo on the cover? You could probably land on the moon if you were to fold your skin in half. At that moment, Qin Guang was still standing at the entrance of Theater 14 with a smile. He greeted everyone who came out of the theater warmly and expressed his gratitude. When most of the people had left and the bodyguards had left one after another, he walked out surrounded by the employees of the Qin group. Mr. Qin, may I ask what you did to the audience in the theater? Qin Guang looked at the tall white reporter with a hooked nose and smirked. I played a movie for them and gave each of them a book that I wrote. That's all. Impossible. You must have done something shameful. You Wuxia people have always been like this. Qin Guang snorted. Do you dare to bet your grandmother's health on me? I can sue you for racial discrimination. The white reporter's expression changed. I'm sorry, I didn't choose the right words. But I think your movie is definitely not as perfect as they say it is. It's not realistic. What did you do to Madame Joshtan? Qin Guang was stunned at first. Madame Joshtan? Oh, you actually don't know. Jenny Joshtan, wife of Mr. Donald Joshtan. She just came out of the theater. After a brief moment of confusion, Qin Guang's anger quickly overflowed. I really don't know. Alright, that despicable Joshtan. I thought it would be enough to block the reporters, but he actually let his wife sneak into the audience. Is he trying to attack me himself? Despicable. Shameless. The reporters and the other crew members looked at each other. For some reason they suddenly had a strong urge to strangle this man. Too much, really too much. You can't pretend like that. Madame Joshtan praises you to the heavens, and you call her despicable. Doesn't your conscience reproach you? But this also proved a terrifying fact. Qin Guang really didn't seem to have done anything. He didn't even know what had happened in the theater? No, Qin Guang from Wuxia. This is a recording of Madame Joshtan's interview that I just recorded with my phone. You can take a look. Qin Guang received the phone with doubt in his heart. But a brief moment later, his face had miraculously turned slightly red. Although it was quite comfortable to be praised, this kind-looking Madame Joshtan had praised him a little too much. Fortunately, he was thick-skinned enough. Anyone else would not have been able to take it. It was hard to believe that this was the wife of that sneaky old man Donald. This guy must have been a war doctor in his previous life. He must have saved at least 10,000 wounded people in World War II. He must have done a great service to be able to marry such a discerning and unique wife. Qin Guang, don't you feel ashamed? The reporter took the phone back and fired a shot at him. Qin Guang shrugged. Why should I feel ashamed? Do you think you can take such a heavy evaluation? Qin Guang looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. Why can't I take it? Have you seen my movies? Where did you get the right to speak? Suddenly the long corridor fell silent. Hearing Qin Guang's tone, he actually accepted Madame Joshtan's crazy words. He felt no pressure and felt that it was only natural. This meant that he really felt that he could suppress all the classic works in the history of the film industry. How arrogant! How arrogant! How arrogant and condescending! How belittling the heroes of the world! No, not only did he belittle the heroes of the world, but he also did not let go of the seniors of the film industry who had passed away. Although they had always felt that this Wuxia man was especially arrogant and had even been molded by public opinion into a devil who had suddenly appeared in the film industry. Many reporters were already mentally prepared for his possible attitude, but now they realized that they had been too optimistic about the situation. Or rather, this Wuxia man's arrogance was a little too exaggerated. Compared to his current performance, it was child's play for him to aim for an Oscar in his first movie. There was no limit to his arrogance. His arrogance and domineeringness had broken history, and his shamelessness had reached a new height of human shamelessness. Crazy, completely crazy. Have you eaten up the word modesty in your dictionary? Do you know what you're saying? Chen Guang instantly fell into a state of being criticized by thousands of people, but his expression did not change. He only looked at the crowd calmly. Are you guys done? His voice was very low, but it had an inexplicable majesty to it, causing the noisy corridor to return to silence in an instant. You guys are really strange. These words did not come from my own mouth, but from other people's evaluation of me and my work. Then why are you guys questioning me here? Don't you think this is ridiculous? You guys have completely violated the professional ethics of a media person. You guys have been biased from the beginning, which is why you are saying such things to me now. The next show will start in half an hour. You haven't even watched it, so how can you judge my movie? It's just like how I have never seen your wife, but I say she is ugly. Will you be happy? After the premiere, even Joshton's wife had become his die-hard fan. The movie's effect was better than he had imagined. Now Chen Guang had more confidence in his words. He couldn't be bothered to be courteous with the reporters and decisively started to act like a rooster. The hook-nosed reporter who had been scolded by him did not agree. Your accusation is without reason. In my heart, my wife is the most beautiful woman in the world. And my doubts about you are reasonable. You have never acted in a movie before. Yes, but there is an absolute relationship between love and appearance. I can't see what your wife looks like from your face. Your sophistry. You can understand it that way, but it doesn't matter. There are still 15 minutes to 10:30. I advise you to hurry up, or I'm afraid you won't be able to buy the tickets for the first screening. In fact, he was bragging. The attendance at the Wuxia Theater in Hollywood would probably be very good, but there was no hope for the other theaters to make a comeback, at least for today. If they were nimble, they could run out of the Wuxia Theater in 10 minutes to another large theater. It should be very easy to buy tickets there. After saying that, Chen Guang turned around and left. After taking 2 steps, he turned back again, took a deep breath and said heavily, "Anyway, you won't believe anything I say now. No matter if I am low-key or arrogant now, you will still write about me in the news tomorrow. So I will say it clearly. Yes, I do believe in one thing. You have to prick up your ears and listen carefully. My movie may not be perfect or the best, but my personal acting art will definitely be epic-making. Unprecedented. Enough to be recorded in the history books. Just like everything else I have done before. You'd better memorize every single word I said, because 100 years later, my words will appear in every film history course in every film academy." After saying that, he really left this time, leaving behind a dumbfounded face of the media and other film producers. Their brains were completely shaken to the point that their worldview was about to collapse. Everyone felt that something was wrong. What this Wuxia man said was too exaggerated. But now no one could find an angle to refute him. No matter how tricky it was, they couldn't find an angle. This guy's premier reputation was too terrifying. In the face of such a reputation, many people were unconvinced and felt uncomfortable. But as Chen Guang said, they didn't go to the cinema, so it was useless to say anything now. Many people felt a faint sense of regret in their hearts. If they had known this would happen, they would have directly applied for the tickets to his premiere as a media reporter. At the beginning, they shouldn't have shown such strong hostility to him, and even deliberately ignored his premiere in order to distance themselves from him. Now it was too late for regrets. They had missed the breaking point of the news. It was said that people in the same industry were enemies. The other film producers had even more complicated thoughts. They had a strong urge to see with their own eyes what the movie that was praised looked like. But although they were tempted, they were hesitant. The decision to boycott him was the consensus of the entire film industry. If they went to watch his movie, wouldn't it be like providing him with box office? They would be laughed at. If the news spread, wouldn't they be laughed at? What if he really used special means to make others praise him against their will? Wouldn't they become even more of a laughing stock? They were in pain and hesitated. They were extremely tempted by the amazing reputation of the premiere of Women, but they couldn't make up their minds because of various reasons. Until a reporter who went there to buy the tickets for the first public screening rushed back and shouted, "Friends who want to watch Women, you have to hurry up. Those celebrities who just went out, and even those medical experts are outside encouraging people to go to the cinema. It has already caused a sensation. Many people changed their minds at the last minute and decided to watch Women. The first public screening of this lousy movie in the Wuxia Theater is still in the number 14 screening room, and now there are only about 40 tickets left. Well, the person who was hesitating just now turned his head and forgot what he was thinking a second ago. Think again? If he thought again, he wouldn't be able to think anymore. Many big names in the media and other crew members rushed to the ticket counter crazily and almost started fighting. It was all because mobile phone apps were not popular in North America. Otherwise, everyone would be quietly competing for internet speed. Chapter 1077. The Sunshine Man and July in Florence were both about 2.5 hours long, and there were only 10 or 20 minutes left, but William Jones and Ben Affleck could hardly sit still in the cinema. They had already watched the film countless times. During the whole screening process, their attention was not on the screen. Instead, they lowered their heads and played with their phones, watching the limelight on social media. The decline at the premiere was irreversible, but in the hearts of the two strongest Oscar contenders, it was not important at all. They cared more about the reputation and box office performance of Women. Although they didn't take Women seriously before, the sudden change at the premiere left a lingering shadow in the hearts of all the people in the two production teams. Although they did not want to admit it, they were worried that they could not control it. At 8:10 p.m., the first report about the reputation of the premiere of Women finally appeared, which made the eyelids of the two crew members, especially the two male leads, twitch violently. Horrible reviews. How amazing was the premiere of Women? William and Bent unanimously rejected this headline, which was obviously written by someone Qin Guang had paid someone to write. They even refused to provide even one click for it. At 8:13 p.m., the second report appeared. It was from Damon, a well-known reporter from the Washington Post. He had previously been a staunch hater of Qin Guang and had even asked the art director of Sunshine for an interview. He was acquainted with the two crew members. Damon's headline was, "The Ghost Filmmaker from the East? He has utterly conquered John Heenan." The crew members of the two crew members who had come for the Olympic film could not sit still anymore. A small number of them chose to click on it to see what was going on. Both Damon and Heenan were celebrities that could not be ignored. 2 minutes later, the person who clicked on it extracted the content of the article and shared it with the people around him. The atmosphere of panic gradually brewed and spread in the two premiere theaters. At the same time, the third and the fourth, more and more reports appeared in the media and social networks. The influence of the premiere of Women, which had already caused a certain amount of popularity, was superimposed. It gradually became a torrent, as if it was going to sweep the entire internet. In the end, William Jones couldn't help but click on an article written by Gay, a reporter from Pan American Entertainment. The title of the article was, "The Wuxia Movie Changed Madame Joshtam. Will Donald Joshtam be redeemed, or will he be subjected to more brutal violence?" This kid named Guy was actually William Jones' high school classmate. The two of them had always been on good terms. Guy also knew where he stood. William Jones couldn't accept the fact that his classmate had started to speak up for Qin Guang. He also had a strong desire to know what his classmate had written. Then he almost jumped out of his chair in shock. It was about the same on Ben Affleck's side. Only a blind person could not see the craziness on the internet. At 8:20 p.m., Sunshine and July were about to play the most important ending of the entire movie, but the huge premiere theater was filled with whispers that couldn't be hidden. The members of the media sitting in the back for the premiere couldn't help but whisper to each other, even though they knew it was rude to talk in the cinema. If it weren't for the publicity fees they received from the two film crews, these people would have rushed out. A question mark as tall as the Statue of Liberty appeared in everyone's mind. What kind of movie did the Wuxia man make? What kind of incredible movie gave him the confidence to spout nonsense like that? What made the audience, both celebrities and ordinary people, go crazy? What made Madame Joshtam instantly change as if she felt the call of the Lord? Our premiere has completely turned into a farce. Listening to the annoying buzzing in the theater, the same thought appeared in William Jones and Ben Affleck's minds. They were angry and helpless. In the end, Donald Joshtam didn't escape. Instead, he took out the heart medicine and placed it on the desk. Then he pretended to be in extreme pain and waited quietly in the study. "That's right, so I won't get beaten up. Although Jenny has a bad temper, she still loves me," Donald comforted himself. At that moment he was angry, confused and panicked, but he was also extremely curious and regretful. "Damn it, I want to see the Wuxia man's Women." If I had known earlier, I would have personally checked the digital source of the movie. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in the dark now. Also, what exactly is written in the book in Jenny's hand? The door creaked and the heavy footsteps could be heard. It was Jenny coming up the stairs. Donald calmed himself down and silently flipped open the Bible in his hand. He read aloud, "In the 4th chapter of Jonah, the Lord said, 'Is it reasonable for you to be angry?' The Lord is a gracious and merciful God. He does not get angry easily. Even if there is a disagreement, the servants of God should follow God's guidance and use a tolerant and merciful heart to accommodate all opposing opinions, whether it's your family, friends, or even strangers. Only when you are full of love can you have a pure life. Donald, the Bible doesn't contain the nonsense you added at the end." Jenny Joshtan stood in front of the study table and gently placed the first volume of Qin Guang's World Faction on the table. She admitted that she had the intention of twisting Donald's ear before entering the house. However, her old husband had even brought out the Gospel of the Lord and filled the table with heart medicine. What else could she say? Mrs. Joshtan, who suddenly understood her husband's pursuit in life, looked at her husband with a rare gentleness and love. Maybe it was because of the illumination of the orange table lamp in the middle of the night, or maybe it was because she was inspired by the Gospel of the Bible. Donald felt relieved. "I've passed the dangerous test. Thank God. Jenny." His voice was slightly trembling. He did not know if it was because he was touched or nervous. Madame Joshtan sighed. "Donald, as you have said yourself, you also need a great and forgiving heart to be tolerant of others. You should really watch Qin Guang's movie. This is his book. I didn't read the content, but I'm sure you'll like it." Mrs. Joshtan pushed the first volume of World Faction, with Qin Guang's handsome face, on it forward slowly. It was placed in front of Donald, right next to the gold-rimmed Bible. Donald keenly noticed that his wife had a religious devotion in her eyes when she looked at the book. What the hell? This is too scary. Did Jenny attend Mass for 2 hours in Theater 14? He opened his mouth to speak, but Mrs. Joshtan had already turned to leave. "Remember not to read it too late. You have to sleep by 2 a.m. at the latest. You can read the rest tomorrow. I think I'll have to prepare 2 sleeping pills for you. I've set the alarm clock. I'll wake up before 2 a.m. If you're not asleep, you're screwed." As the study room door closed, Donald lowered his head to look at World Faction again. All right, it's Qin Guang's face again. This shameless Wuxia man's smile was so smug and sinister. Donald looked up at the time. It was almost 10:30 p.m. I wonder how the premieres of Sunshine and July are going? They'll probably be in a mess, right? I really shouldn't have left the theater. Now, as the person in charge of the Wuxia Theater, I don't even know anything. Donald blamed himself as he casually flipped open World Faction Performing Arts. Great, I don't have to see that annoying guy's face anymore. I don't believe you can write a useful book. The difference between the Wuxia film industry and the Hollywood film industry is like a 3-year-old standing next to Shaquille O'Neal. World Faction Performing Arts? Are you kidding me? I only know about Performance School, Experience School, and Method School. What the hell is World Faction? Do you want to add another genre to the traditional 3 major performing genres? Do you think you're Van Gogh or Picasso? Can you be any more shameless? Where did you find a ghostwriter? How ignorant must you be to write such a book without any common sense? Donald skipped the title page and went straight to the preface. He still had a mocking look on his face. Although he had received a lot of feedback about women, and even his wife, Jenny, had changed, Donald still didn't think that Qin Guang could come up with a valuable book. Writing an academic book wasn't like telling a story. It had a high requirement for the author. Without years of experience, the book would only make people laugh. Moreover, this was the first time that Qin Guang, a Chinese internet celebrity, got shocked. He didn't know where he got the courage to go straight for the Oscars. As for writing a book on performing arts, it was even more ridiculous. Coupled with the name World Faction Performing Arts, it only proved how ignorant he was about the film industry and performing arts. The ignorant are fearless. You don't understand why the film industry only has 3 specific systems after 100 years of development. With such thoughts in mind, Donald almost burst out laughing when he saw the first line of the preface. Some people might think that my World Faction Performing Arts is the 4th system after the first 3, but you're all wrong. The Cosmopolitan School is above all performing arts. It is the general principle of the entire performing arts system. In the future, all the classifications of performing arts will be built on the foundation of the Cosmopolitan School, just like Newton's theorem for modern science. Donald almost broke down when he heard that. Chapter 1078. If it weren't for the fact that women's reputation had exploded and that Jenny's words were still ringing in his ears, Donald would have grabbed the book and thrown it out of the window. Crazy, the whole world had gone crazy. If this kind of person had been born hundreds of years ago, he would have been burned alive on the stand. At the Wuxia Theater, the premieres of Sunshine and July were a complete mess. The comments and public opinion on the internet collapsed too. In the eyes of ordinary people, it was just a show and they might be curious about the movie. For the fans of the celebrities who were the guests of Women Today, it might be a carnival. To be able to see so many superstars of the fighting world gathered together, even if it was just a walk on stage, it would be a grand celebration. However, for movie lovers and people in the European and American film and television circles, it was a terrible tragedy and disaster. Donald Jostin's outlook on life and the world had collapsed too. However, the person who started it all, the person who almost turned the Wuxia Theater upside down, Chen Guang, was with Bonner Pierce and the others in a huge standalone villa in the wealthy area of Los Angeles. Now that everything was on track, Chen Guang only needed to finish writing the next volume of World Faction and throw the bomb out on time. He didn't have to worry about anything else. Although it would be a pity to waste an hour or two, since Mr. Pierce had made a promise, Chen Guang had to support him. It wouldn't be difficult to borrow a favor again. He planned to teach the 50 or so elites in the world of fighting, and boxing a lesson in one go. The lesson was simple. All of you come together. I won't use ancient Chinese martial arts. I'll only use my fists and legs and strength. If any of you don't fly into the pool in 5 minutes, I lose. If I sweat a drop, I lose. If anyone can touch me, it's my loss. Everyone, I understand how you feel, but listen to me. If you do it one by one like you want, it'll be meaningless. It'll be a waste of time. It's not that I'm stingy, but I can't describe how I train my skills. Even if I say it and all of you hear it, you won't be able to learn it. What I possess is a power that completely surpasses the limits of human beings. I'm not talking about Wuxia's inner strength. I'm just talking about muscle strength. You can even think of me as a human from another era, and that's not wrong. But if you want to copy my training method, it's impossible. You'll die for sure. The death rate is 100%. Chen Guang stood by the side of the pool, surrounded by 3 to 5 scantily clad beauties in bikinis. They rubbed themselves against his body, but his expression did not change. He calmly explained to the boxing bosses. In the beginning, when he proposed the class method, these big shots who had helped him a lot today were actually very angry. Everyone felt that his friend was trying to fool them. Chen Guang owed him a favor, so he was exceptionally patient and explained a little more. As he explained, he pinched the stainless steel railing of the swimming pool with 2 fingers and exerted force in a very casual manner. The high-grade stainless steel railing, which was 8 millimeters thick, quickly deformed between his fingers. It was constantly being squeezed, and an ear-piercing and unpleasant crunching sound could be heard. When Chen Guang loosened his fingers, the part of the railing that was about 40 centimeters in diameter that was pinched had completely turned into flat steel. Many people in the arena could twist and bend steel pipes, but to use only 2 fingers to pinch the railing to such an extent without a change in expression was completely beyond everyone's understanding. Are your 2 fingers a hydraulic press? Oh, my God. *T. WTF. What a terrifying Wuxia person. What the F***ck is he doing? These superstars who were used to seeing the world and were also the world's strongest boxing experts, were generally bewildered. What happened next was logical. In less than 3 minutes, Chen Guang turned the huge swimming pool into dumplings. Just as he said, there was not a single drop of sweat, and no one touched the corner of his clothes. Whether it was speed or strength, or even dynamic vision and brain reaction speed, Chen Guang was many times stronger than these top powerhouses who were already considered to be the limit of humanity. As for how strong he was, even he himself was not sure. He stood by the pool and looked at the people who were still soaking in the water with a smile. Everyone, what I can teach you for the time being is in the movements I made just now. Mr. Pierce recorded the whole process with a high-speed camera. You can use the high-speed camera to break down each step of my exertion of force. You should be able to clearly see my technique of exertion of force. This will be helpful to you, but as for how much you can understand, it will depend on each person's specific talent. In short, I am very grateful to everyone for today. Chen Guang's attitude was exceptionally kind. In his opinion, this was an equivalent exchange. What he took out was indeed his trump card. In the past, he had never taught anyone so formally in the past. On one hand, it was because others were not at that level, and they would not be able to master it even if he taught them. On the other hand, such an important skill, of course, could not be easily taught. Many of the big shots in the fighting and boxing world were soaking in the water. Everyone was taught a lesson by Qin Guang, but they were not the least bit unhappy. Their minds were filled with his movements just now. "That, Mr. Qin, your training method?" Seeing that Qin Guang was about to leave, someone still asked unwillingly. Qin Guang thought to himself and decided to brag. "Before you, I also had a real disciple named Xuelin. He was a Chinese soldier. Indeed, he went through my special training and his pure strength increased by 40%, a very standard 40%. I do have a training method that can completely develop potential, but the mortality rate is as high as 90%. Xuelin's luck to be able to survive makes me envious. But the mortality rate is too high. I am not confident and I do not intend to teach it. If you want to obtain power beyond the limits of humanity, you must first be prepared to die." After that, he did not wait for the others to react and said goodbye to Mr. Pierce. As for the fiery woman's resentful gaze, he completely ignored it. It was not that he was that righteous, but there was still the next volume of World's Faction, waiting to be written. The sooner he went back, the sooner he could be at ease. If he was lazy and could not finish it the day after tomorrow, it would be embarrassing. This was a matter of life and death and he could not be careless. The old man was wise, he could not drop the ball at a critical moment and die because he could not control his crotch. After Qin Guang left, the people in the pool climbed out of the water one after another. Just as they were about to urge Bonner Pierce to organize the high-speed camera, Pierce reminded them, "Friends, you seem to have forgotten something." "What?" "Shouldn't you express your views on Mr. Chen's movie on your social media accounts?" Everyone suddenly understood. 10 minutes later, except for a certain idiot who forgot to take out his phone when he was fighting and couldn't send a message due to the water on his phone, the 50 or so people updated their Twitter, Instagram and personal media in one go. They even competed with each other to see who could write more mushy praises. In the end, Big Xiao, who looked crude but was actually literary, won by an overwhelming margin. His story went like this. "For the first half of my life I was just an ordinary person. Thank God for the talent I was given, allowing me to appear on the stage of WCW and WWE. On this stage I obtained glory, wealth, money and women. But most importantly, it changed me from Paul White to the Big Hugh I am today. It is because I am Biggie Hugh that I was invited by Mr. Pierce to walk into the Hollywood Wuxia Theater's Theater number 14 today and see such an incredible and great movie. I fought for the first half of my life just for this movie tonight. If you are my fans and want to know why I am so fanatical, even more fanatical than I was at WrestleMania, don't hesitate and rush to the theater next to you as fast as you can. Mr. Chin is waiting for you with his women." Everyone agreed with Big Xiao's flattering story. His flattery was innovative. It was like listening to thunder in silence. He used simple and seemingly ordinary words to boast to a new height. This flattery was both deep and broad. The key was that his personal reputation and the movie's reputation were completely tied together. It was not as superficial and straightforward as ordinary praise. More than 50 top fighting and boxing superstars updated their social media accounts at the same time, talking about the same thing, and praising it crazily in unison. Finally, they called on their fans to go to the theater. What kind of sensation would it cause on social media? At first, fans who had only followed their accounts thought that the most serious case of account theft in history had happened before they could see the latest news. It was not until later that countless fans took the initiative to search for today's news and found out that they really attended the movie premiere together, that their doubts were gradually dispelled. Then, because of their idol's call, they developed a strong interest in the movie. It wasn't just these people. The geniuses of America's Dota Tower, the big shots of the global racing and underground drag racing world, world-renowned piano masters, linguists, medical giants, and even 2 Nobel Prize winners all spoke out on this night. Several big shots in the civil aviation industry even had the idea to organize watching the movie in their own companies. They learned from the common practice in Wuxia. The companies paid the bill and forcibly increased the box office. Just as Qin Guang stayed up all night writing, "Oh no," writing "The Storm of Women," was about to sweep the world. At the same time, in Wuxia, 12 time zones away, the real premiere that was even grander than that in Los Angeles finally began. Big Beard Deng led the other main cast members apart from Qin Guang to suppress the scene. The scene could be said to be full of gongs and drums. No one could tell from Big Beard's smiling face how uncertain he was at the moment. Poor Big Beard did not know that Qin Guang had instantly turned the tables in Los Angeles. He was still worried about Qin Guang's one-person premiere, in Los Angeles. He was even more worried that the negative comments from the global uproar would affect the box office of Women in Wuxia. As for the North American box office? What was that? Was it edible? Did it taste good? Chapter 1079. Jin Shirue and Jiang Yage, dressed in luxurious dresses, stood side by side on the red carpet. They skillfully posed in either dignified or lively and lovely poses. For a moment, countless films were wiped out. After the photo shoot, the two of them continued to walk to the stage side by side. Jiang Yage quietly turned her head and whispered, "Qin Guang is so pitiful. We should have gone to Los Angeles to help him." Jin Shirue's lips moved slightly. "It's useless. Although we are famous in China, we don't have many fans in Europe and America. Even if we go, no one will buy it." Jiang Yage said, "Sai, it's all Grandpa's fault. If he didn't refuse, I could have asked Mr. Fong or Mr. Zhou to help him." Jin Shirue still shook her head. Although they are famous in Europe and America, they are still Chinese. The problem that Qin Guang is facing now is not that the audience doesn't know him, but that his popularity is almost on par with Bruce Lee. But it's useless. He has been set up as the opposite of the movie. Even if we pull people from China over, it won't change the European and American audience's opinion of him and women. Jiang Yage nodded helplessly. "That's right. They will also lose their reputation. Alas, my dear Light, this is a very unconventional course of his. Although we all think that he can win an Oscar with his acting skills, it's too rushed." Jin Shirue pondered for a moment. "I think he probably has his own difficulties. No matter what, we must help him stabilize the domestic box office. Although the Oscars don't care about the box office, there are still some benefits. If we can make the domestic box office reach a phenomenal level, it can make up for the loss of the North American box office to a certain extent." Jiang Yage tapped on her phone. "Yes, I just posted on Weibo." "What did you post?" "If the box office exceeds 500 million, I will release the highlights of the kissing scene. If it exceeds 1 billion, I will release the highlights of the sex scene. If it exceeds 2 billion, I will release the highlights of the light. If it exceeds 4 billion, I will..." "Forget it, I haven't written that yet." "Are you crazy? We don't have any tidbits at all. All the scenes with him were done in one take." Jiang Yage shrugged. "Why don't we just ask Qin Guang to take some shots?" You can do that." On the other hand, at 1 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles, the North American box office data for the premiere of Women was released. The total screening rate was 0.67%, the occupancy rate was 9.3%, and the total box office earnings were less than $1 million. Extremely low screening rate, extremely low attendance rate. It looked terrible, but it was completely disproportionate to these numbers. What was even more shocking was the extremely high reputation. Although the first public screening at the Wuxia Theater was completely full, it still took time for things to develop. The social media accounts of the famous guests were also a little late. The overall attendance of the first public screening in other cinemas in Los Angeles was still not high. When the data was zoomed in to the United States, the average attendance was even lower. Later, the attendance of the evening screening was incredibly higher than that of the first public screening. It was a pity that it was already past midnight, so it was not included in the box office statistics on the day of the premiere. Qin Guang didn't care about what was going on outside the window. The poor employees of the Tianguang group were heartbroken by the terrible attendance rate. Sitting in the temporary office, Fang Tianyu whined with dark circles under his eyes. "There's no reason. Our premiere is so powerful. Even if the first public screening can't be a blockbuster, it should at least be at least 10% of the seats, right? Our screening rate is already low, and the attendance rate is still low. What kind of hatred does our international friends have?" Lu Xiaoyang comforted him. "Fang, don't worry. Even if we can make a comeback at the premiere, it will take time for the news to spread, right? Even if many people want to change their minds because of the guests, it is already night time. Most people won't go out at night just to watch a movie. Let's wait and see. There should be a surprise in the attendance rate tomorrow. We can't do anything about it on the day of the premiere." "How can you be so calm, buttface? You don't understand, Fang Tianyu. After staying with the boss for a long time, I feel that I have a tendency to be like the boss. Look at my face. Don't you think I have the demeanor of a general now?" "It's hard to say about the demeanor of a general, but you are really crazy." "Screw you." After talking for a while and communicating with Yu Hong in China, they forcibly encouraged Qin Guang's inexplicable confidence. After that, they went back to the hotel and went to sleep with their own thoughts. The next morning the sun rose as usual and everything looked so ordinary. But no one knew that this would be the most crazy day in the history of movies. When the future generations recalled this day, they couldn't help but tremble with fear. At 9:30 in the morning, the ticket seller of the Wuxia Theater in Hollywood opened the ticket window sleepily as usual. The first screening of the day was at 10 o'clock in the morning, but there were usually few audiences in the morning. Maybe the first movie tickets would be sold at 9:50 in the morning. The ticket seller thought to himself as he raised his eyes and looked forward. Wait, are my eyes playing tricks on me? What's going on? The ticket seller rubbed his eyes to make sure that he wasn't seeing things. Looking out from the window, he saw a long line of people winding through the window all the way to the stairs 20 or 30 meters away. There were obviously people lining up at the bottom of the stairs. The ticket seller stretched his neck and looked down. He actually saw the long line on the square through the stairs. The line was at least 100 meters long, right? Am I dreaming? The poor ticket seller pinched his thigh hard to make sure that he was awake. This kind of queuing situation was not uncommon in the Wuxia Theater, but that was only at night. It was impossible to get in during the day, especially the first screening in the morning. 2 tickets for women, please? Just when the ticket seller was in a daze, the strong man at the front of the line had already shouted. Okay. The ticket seller didn't expect that his busy work would start so early. Half an hour after the morning screening, the real-time statistics of the North American box office were released. The screening rate of women was still only 0.67%. As a big new movie, it was hard for people to look at it directly. It was even worse than a roadside picnic. However, the attendance rate of women had completely reversed. It even made people in the European and American film circles fly into a rage and scream horribly. 99.8%. Almost 100% attendance rate for the morning screening. What kind of concept was this? This was going against the natural order of things. No, it was already going against the natural order of things. How many years had it been since such an attendance rate had appeared in the history of movies? Even the popular Titanic couldn't achieve this in the primetime slot. After all, many people didn't like to sit in the first row or in the corner, even if they had to wait for the next screening. There was really no need to squeeze everyone in the same theater and push the attendance rate to an insane 99%. Although he didn't want to admit it, this was close to a historical 100% attendance rate. But it was still in the morning. In the afternoon and evening, this terrifying figure was very likely to be obtained by him. You know, we were still frantically boycotting this movie yesterday. Today you made its attendance rate soar to a historical level. How could we accept this? What was this? The biggest irony? The people in the film circle thought of the news report they saw last night, and then thought of Qin Guang's horrible guest who fell from the sky, and felt like crying. They thought that the people in the circle would unite to call on their own fans or fans to boycott him, and that would be enough to make him leave dejectedly. Before his premiere, everything had looked perfect, but in the last 5 minutes he had turned the tables around. That's right. Everyone thought that those guests were invited by Qin Guang. No one believed that the guests came uninvited. Even if someone told them the truth, they would not be willing to accept it. They would only feel that the world was broken. Sinan, these well-developed idiots. And those who were engaged in academics, did your brains go bad from learning medical language? You idiots, Raven Holland and Pires. You're all world-renowned piano artists after all. Don't you have any artistic pursuits? Don't you understand how ironic his behavior is? And those racers. Hamilton, don't you have any sense of social responsibility? Do you know what kind of people you're supporting? I heard that there are some esports players who don't do their jobs. And there are idiots who only know how to fly planes. In the words of the Chinese, you are all helping the wicked. On the second day of its screening, Women achieved a 180-degree reversal in the number of seats from hell to heaven. It's precisely because you idiots who have no conscience, no standpoint, and no respect for art went against your conscience, dug your eyes out, and spread ignorant comments on the internet that flattered such a lousy film without any bottom line. The influence of the F1 champion, the WRC champion, and the Dakar champion was undoubtedly world-class. The influence of boxing superstars such as Sinan, Verbal Cannon, and Mayweather was also world-class. These people mobilized their fans to support Women, coupled with their flattering words that would make people blush, would inevitably make some people who did not usually go to the cinema pay for tickets. There were many people who went to watch the movie, but the screening rate was extremely low. The direct result was, of course, that the attendance rate exploded on the spot. The heavenly Tao reincarnated, everything had long since been predestined. The audience that provided 9.3% attendance rate for women yesterday was less than 10,000 people. They must have all been paid by the Chinese. There were less than 10,000 people in the audience that attended 9.3% of the seats for women yesterday. All of them must have been paid by the Chinese to be fake reviewers. Or else, how could the so-called ordinary people on the internet who claim to be neutral and just an ordinary audience applaud so uniformly? Rotten Tomatoes fresh 98.7%. There were less than 100 votes, and the only negative comment was even a tie. Sorry, my hand slipped and I clicked the wrong button. What was this? IMDb score of 10 points. Okay, the number of voters was also less than 100. What was this? Just how shameless and deranged a person must be to be able to bribe the internet water army so brazenly. Okay, in short, with your shamelessness and the torrent of yuan, you successfully swindled a terrifying 99.8% attendance rate this morning. But now there were nearly 100,000 people in the audience. We don't believe that your torrent of yuan can still play a role. At noon, when the negative comments started to appear, maybe you could continue to increase the attendance rate in the afternoon, but at the peak hour in the evening, the negative comments would show your true colors. At this point, the people in the European and American film industry could only hope for this. Chapter 1080. At the same time, the box office statistics for the opening day in Wuxia were finally released. The data looked very worrying. In the beginning, Big Beard Deng and everyone else were aiming to reach the top of the premiere, but now it seemed that they had been affected by external factors. The box office on the opening day was more than 30 million yuan, the third place in the country. As a film directed by Deng Xiaojiang, it had Jiang Yage, Jin Shiyue, Ren Chong, Zhou Ye, and Zhao Yueling. More importantly, the super internet celebrity Qin Guang's first electrocution was used as a gimmick. It had been popular in China for half a year, and it had too many hidden advantages over ordinary films in terms of publicity. However, it fell to the third place on the opening day, which was a heavy blow to them. In Europe and the United States, they also paid close attention to the box office of women in Wuxia. After they got the statistics, they finally let out a long sigh of relief, and then gloated and wanted to celebrate. You deserve it, you shameful Wuxia people. You deserve it. Even your own countrymen don't like you. In your own words, you are trapped in a cocoon of your own making. At this time, Qin Guang, who was writing in his room, also heard the bad news from Wuxia, but he did not panic. He comforted the four masters with a few words, and then continued to concentrate on writing the monograph. He was so calm that Yu Hong thought that he might have met a fake boss. Because he knew that from now on, the reputation of his film should be like 10-year-old wine suddenly opened, and the fragrance should spread 10 miles away. At 12:30 noon, the North American audience who had finished watching the film in the morning began to share their experience on their social media or in front of their colleagues, classmates, and even neighbors. Even if they were unwilling to say it, others would take the initiative to ask if they knew that they had watched the film. Although there were countless negative rumors about women in North America, and it was almost boycotted by the whole people, the side benefit was that the film had a wide popularity that was completely disproportionate to the box office. Few people watched it, but almost everyone knew about it. This was a strange phenomenon that had not happened in 20 or 30 years. After all, when the box office of other movies completely collapsed, it was mostly because the publicity was not good enough, and their popularity did not increase. They were quietly released and then quietly went on a 3-day tour. Even if they died completely, they would not be able to make a comeback. The popularity of women had been boycotted by many big stars in the entertainment circle, but it had become known by everyone. This was also Qin Guang's initial goal. The more people who resisted, the more people would know. It was better to be boycotted than ignored. Everyone was curious. Regardless of whether it was those who had participated in the boycott or those who had been indifferent, they all wanted to know what this movie that had been scolded like. The result was that, at 1 p.m., the movie's reputation had completely achieved the effect of fragrance wafting thousands of miles. It wasn't that there were no people to nitpick, and it wasn't that there were no thorns to nitpick. In the movie, the scenes in which Qin Guang did not participate in were indeed not amazing, and there were even a lot of flaws. But she couldn't resist the fact that her beauty covered all her ugliness, and she couldn't resist the fact that everyone applauded her. If you disagreed, you either had a wrong aesthetic view or your worldview was skewed. When others searched online, they would see that the movie had a Rotten Tomatoes freshness rating of almost 100%, and a full score of 10 on IMDb. Even if they really saw the bad parts in the eyes of the world, the flaws could not obscure the beauty, because no one could really deny the incredible acting skills that Chen Guang had shown in the movie. Even though they knew that it was a scene through the screen, the audience still felt like they were in the scene. It was completely different from the experience of watching a normal movie. When watching women, even though they knew that there was nothing amazing about the plot, they still could not help but be completely immersed in the whole process of watching the movie. It was as if they had become the male lead, the stubborn retired boxing champion who would never admit defeat. Every time he was happy, the audience would giggle with him unconsciously. When he was angry, the audience would be furious. When he was knocked down in the boxing ring, the audience would also feel the pain in their cheeks. Because of the hasty production and the limitation of the theme and positioning of the movie, although women used an IMAX screen, it did not provide a 3D source, but an ordinary 2D movie. But even so, the experience that the whole movie brought to the audience was completely above that of a 3D movie. Although the audience was in the theater, their hearts were completely dragged into the movie by Chen Guang's world-class acting skills. It was as if they were standing in the world of the movie, watching the story happen and advance with their own eyes. The audience's mind was completely integrated with the characters in the movie. This was also the reason why many older academic giants and piano masters who had more experience in life looked a little absent-minded when they walked out of the theater. The more understanding and the more knowledgeable people were about life, the deeper they were immersed in the movie, and the deeper their feelings were, the harder it was to get out of the movie when they walked out of the theater. At 1:30 p.m., when the number of ratings on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes reached 20,000, the rating was still as high as 9, and the freshness was still as high as 99.9%. The media, film critics, and even people in the European and American entertainment circles began to panic. Their curiosity stimulated them crazily. Even in their dreams, they wanted to go in and see what kind of incredible movie this was. But their rationality kept waking them up. This was Chen Guang's conspiracy, a complete scam. If I go into the theater, I will be falling into his trap and I will provide him with the box office. I can't go. I absolutely can't go by myself. Even if I encourage the people around me to go, I can't go. When Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang saw such an explosion of praise on the internet, they finally understood why Chen Guang was so crazy and confident. Boss Chen was so awesome. Indeed, he planned to show off in a tent and win the box office from thousands of miles away. With this attendance rate and this reputation, would those damn theaters dare to not increase the number of showtimes? You are going against the US dollar, against the working people of the democratic country. You guys are triangular heads that block the wheel of history with your arms. You will only be crushed into pieces by the torrent of history. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the attendance data for the first show of the afternoon appeared. 100%. This time it was really full. It was said that some people even asked for aisle seats, but this rude request was sternly rejected by the major theaters for safety reasons. The theaters that had taken the initiative to reduce the number of showtimes for women were also dumbfounded. They felt that the whole world had gone crazy. The word of mouth on the internet was still brewing and it was even snowballing. More and more people could not resist the forced science or passive seduction of their friends, and took the initiative to go to the theater. Some people thought, I don't believe that such a movie exists in this world. I don't believe in heresy, I want to find out the truth, and then severely criticized Charlie. Some people thought, XX has always had a high taste in movies. He said that a good movie would definitely not be bad and I have to watch it. Some people thought, I have had enough of the praise on the internet, I have to uphold justice, I have to see it with my own eyes, and then I will ruthlessly refute those guys. Some people went to the theater because of the power of their idol, some went to the theater because of the controversy, some went to the theater because of the reputation, and some went to the theater because they heard that the protagonist was a boxer. But in short, no matter how strange the reasons were, the final result was that all rivers returned to the sea. Now the outside of the theater was filled with angry people, because they had discovered an extremely embarrassing thing. A movie that had just been released was actually not able to buy tickets. They went to check the number of showtimes on the internet, and only then did they find out that this popular movie actually had a ridiculously low number of showtimes of 0.67%. This was simply ridiculous. You bunch of D*MN bastards. You have 10 screening halls but only one screening hall plays this movie every 4 hours? Are you kidding me? You're wasting our lives. Do you want us to queue for 3 hours to wait for it? I want to lodge a complaint against you. This is a crime. We demand that you immediately increase the number of showtimes and apologize to us. Women has just been released and now so many of us want to watch it, but your theater actually has no showtimes at all? A movie is a movie and this is politics. We want a movie, not politics. Protest. This was the good thing about the land of the free. If they were unhappy with something, they could protest at any time. The objects of protest could range from Trump's arrogant hairstyle to McDonald's hamburgers becoming smaller. There was nothing in the world that they could not protest against. Now, the unlucky ones were the movie theaters. There were too many people queuing outside, and people with the same demands were gathered together. It was simply a natural hotbed of protest. The theaters that originally had plans to show women were still fine. After an emergency discussion, they immediately distributed the digital source to each screening hall and adjusted the showtimes at the last minute. Only then did they solve the urgent problem. The theaters that had previously cut the showtimes to 0, returned the digital source, or had no plans to show the movie at all were in trouble. They had no choice but to call Tang Zhao's distribution company and request to renegotiate the showtimes. After some internal discussion within the Qingguang group, they asked for Qingguang's approval. He slapped his thigh and gave a clear answer. I'm sorry, you used to be indifferent to me, but now I'm out of your league. Showtime subsidy? I'm sorry, I don't have a single cent share of the box office? You want us to take 30% of the industry rules? I'm sorry, when you broke the contract, we re-evaluated your company's credibility and put you on the list of companies that broke their promises. Now that we want to cooperate again, your share of the box office is only 60%, and we want 40%. I'm sorry, our company invested too much in the initial publicity, but we didn't get the showtimes we expected. Now we need to increase the share to make up for the loss of publicity expenses. That's right, we want 40%. What? Why don't we rob them? Alright, it's not wrong if you want to understand it that way. We are indeed robbing, so do you want it? Are you willing to be robbed by us? How could the major movie theaters not be willing? They couldn't, or else they would be torn down. Moreover, when the monetary loss was within an acceptable range, the movie theater companies would talk about justice with the European and American filmmakers. Now, the monetary loss was already immeasurable, and the occupancy rate of other movies was already 100%. We can't talk about justice anymore. This is the time to do business. In addition, now that all the movie theaters in the US were showing women, if we were to offend them, we would offend all the filmmakers. Then I'm sorry, but you still have to rely on us to make a living. Do you have the ability to not show the movie in the US? Of course not, so it doesn't matter if we offend you. When it was past 8 p.m., the showtimes for women officially turned the tables, instantly rising to 36%. Qingguang had accidentally created another historical record, the strongest rescheduling rate in history. After one day of screening, it went from 0.67% to 36.8%, an increase of as much as 55 times. What was even more shocking was that even though the showtimes were already at the level of the top A-list blockbusters, the occupancy rate was still maintained at a crazy 90% and above. On this evening, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that everyone turned out for this movie. Chapter 1081. Fang Qianyu and Lu Xiaoyang hugged each other tightly in the office, almost crying tears of joy. Damn, it feels so good to act cool with the boss. We actually managed such a godly film. We really reached the peak of life by lying down. It seems that it won't take long for us to be promoted, get a raise, become general managers, become CEOs, marry beautiful women, and reach the peak of life. I'm a little excited just thinking about it. Wait, now that we're the senior managers of a company with a market value of tens of billions, ordinary CEOs really can't catch up to us? Then the problem is, where are our beautiful women? Damn, they've all been picked up by President Qin. Forget it, no matter what, with everyone's cooperation on the second day of the film's release, it can be said that we've hit the bottom and made a comeback all over the world. Congratulations. Alright, come to think of it, it seems that we haven't actually done anything? We've been working together without doing anything? The two of them thought about it carefully. Indeed, it was the most frightening thing when the atmosphere suddenly became quiet. After the crazy investment in advertising in the early stages, although there was still nearly $20 million left in the budget for the Olympic Games, that was all for the PY deals with the judges after the release of the film, as well as for the obvious online vote solicitation. The budget for the film's box office and reputation had all been spent, the contracts had been signed, and the supporting publicity plans were all in hand. The only thing left was to push forward step by step throughout the film's release cycle. So, in fact, today's fourfold counterattack in terms of attendance, scheduling, box office, and reputation seemed to have nothing to do with them at all. It was all the miracle brought about by the boss's godly acting skills in the film. The boss is indeed the boss. He's right, a film is a film. The only thing that could really determine the final height of a film was the artistic value and standard shown in the film. These things were all-encompassing. The plot, narrative rhythm and shooting effect of the film were one aspect, but the acting skills of the actors were another. As long as it could bring the audience a pleasant and unforgettable viewing experience, whether it was an artistic film or a commercial blockbuster, as long as it could make the audience feel intoxicated and memorable, it was a good film. Women was lagging behind in all other aspects, but with the boss's acting skills he managed to pull it all back. As long as he was there, the audience didn't need special effects, didn't even care about the story, and could even tolerate English subtitles with Chinese pronunciation. He could even tolerate the scenes that he had shot before he joined the crew, muddling through. In the face of such a boss, other than kneeling down, we can only ask for a bonus, right? On the other hand, in China, after the collapse on the opening day, the real evaluation of the movie took a night to brew. The next morning, especially after 8 o'clock, the real quality of the movie was gradually revealed. Gold will always shine. What's more, the reputation of women had exploded in North America, and it had even traveled overseas to support China. Those who followed the trend of boycotting women yesterday after one night, found that their boycotting had become stupid actions of worshipping foreign things. They were laughed at by the people around them. You don't support your own countrymen, and when the foreigners scold you, you believe them and start boycotting Chinese movies. Why don't you go wag your tail at your daddy rice? It's a pity that others don't like you. It's a pity that even your American daddy is praising heroin. So the question is, as a Rice Party member, what should you do now? Do you want to hang yourself, or do you want me to hang you? Or do you want to go to the cinema and buy a ticket, then come out and write a review of more than 1,000 words? Facing this situation, the people who boycotted women and made it to the third place in the domestic box office on the opening day could only express their embarrassment. Damn it, the Hollywood bigwigs are not helping us. We boycotted Qingguang in China to support you. Now that your backyard is on fire, how can we cooperate with the Taijun? Oh no, cooperate with our international friends to carry out work? XX, I don't want to criticize you, but write a review and come to my office tomorrow. I've seen your Weibo. Although we are not a state-owned enterprise, we are still under the red flag. There is something wrong with your awareness. XX, let's break up. You are a shameful Rice Party member. I look down on you. XX, people of different principles cannot make plans together. From now on, we are no longer friends. You walk your financial path and I will cross the social bridge. XX, hurry up and buy 2 tickets for me and my wife. You pay the bill. We can still be friends. In China, there were all kinds of scenes like this. The good young people who hated Qingguang had suffered the most painful blow in history. Whether it was financially or mentally, it could be said to be a double blow. What was worse was that the stubborn young people suffered a third, more tragic blow. I have no choice. I can't control my Qilin arm when facing people like you who have lost your mind. What? You mean medical expenses? That's impossible. Outside, the sound of gongs and drums could be heard. However, the initiator of all this, Qingguang, was still writing in the hotel with a calm face. There was no way. The old man's world-class acting skills were given by the heavenly Holy Grail. It was impossible for him not to be so good. I want to be weaker, but I can't do it. While he was showing off, his phone rang. He picked it up and saw that it was Zhuo Jingxi. Qingguang was a little puzzled. It was 9 o'clock in the morning in China. Is teacher Zhuo calling to congratulate me on my upcoming great success? He happily picked up the phone, but after only a few words, his mood turned from sunny to gloomy. He felt a slight pain in the ass. About 15 minutes later, Qingguang rubbed his eyebrows and hung up the phone. Zhuo Jingxi did not know about him and women at all. Instead, she threw 2 pieces of bad news to Qingguang. For the past few days, Zhuo Jingxi had been in Wuxia University's photocatalyst laboratory trying to synthesize the 5 God-level formulas. She tried to use the existing resources of Wuxia University to synthesize the 5 God-level formulas. However, after several consecutive days of feasibility verification, Zhuo Jingxi sadly discovered that according to the existing conditions of Wuxia University's photocatalyst laboratory, even if all the strong resources of several other research institutes in China that were engaged in related research were integrated, there was still a huge gap in equipment and a serious lack of raw materials. In short, Zhuo Jingxi concluded that even if domestic scientific research progressed by leaps and bounds, it was impossible to synthesize the 5 God-level formulas in at least 1 to 2 years. Another piece of bad news was already within Qingguang's expectations. Prince, whose laboratory results had been stolen, would not turn a blind eye to Zhuo Jingxi. 2 days after she settled down at Gokyo University, Prince's lawyer's letter followed. Prince's laboratory formally filed a lawsuit, accusing Zhuo Jingxi of stealing laboratory property, suspected of espionage, stealing trade secrets and many other crimes. In fact, similar things had been common in recent years. Almost every time a Chinese executive from a foreign research institute returned to China, they would often bring a pile of lawsuits with them. However, the Chinese executives usually turned a blind eye to this, putting on an attitude of, "You can sue me, I'll pretend I didn't see anything. Did you really think that we sent out Chinese talents to work for you for free? Didn't we want these high-end talents to bring back important technology? When these people returned to China, we couldn't wait to treat them like treasures and you still want to sue me? You can sue me all you want and I'll admit defeat." Of course, these high-level confrontations can't be resolved simply by slamming the table and acting shamelessly. We won't blatantly shield you. We respect the demands of your country's companies and intellectual property rights more. However, lawsuits involving intellectual property rights are always protracted battles. As for us, let's just drag it out for the time being. However, the situation was a little different this time. Prince had found a strong ally in China, led by a local tyrant. With the help of Tiansong Water Group, this lawsuit, which would have been downplayed or even completely ignored, inexplicably caused an earthquake in the domestic science and technology circle. In just 2 or 3 days, almost everyone in the domestic scientific research circle knew about this. There were many overt and covert statements and rumors. Even administrative agencies like Wujing University and the Science and Technology Department of Dechuan Province felt tremendous pressure. Prince's lawsuit could cause such a sensational effect, all because of the agreement reached with Tiansong Water Group after they reached an agreement with it. Tiansong Water Group almost became Prince's spokesperson in China, mobilizing all kinds of relationships, and at the same time putting pressure on Xiaoguang Environmental Protection, Tongshan Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant, Gokyo University, and the domestic science and technology community. The main purpose was also simple. Song Ningyuan felt that he had seen through Qin Guang's trump card and believed that Qin Guang dared to continue to operate Tongshan Industrial Plant because of the photocatalyst technology brought back by Zhuo Jingxi from the United States. He made such a huge noise, but he did not really intend to send Zhuo Jingxi to court because of this matter. His main purpose was nothing more than to shock the tiger and strangle the possibility of Qin Guang using Prince's photocatalyst technology in Tongshan Industrial Plant in advance. The strength of Prince's International Monopoly Laboratory and Tiansong Water Group, the leading enterprise in China, could not be underestimated. For a time, Gokyo University faced tremendous pressure and was accused of harboring. This pressure came from the academic community, the business community, and a considerable degree of political power. On the other hand, the school was indecisive due to the incident of Qin Guang overthrowing Su Lijing in a fit of rage for Zhuo Jingxi. It was definitely not possible to hand Zhuo Jingxi over like this. God knew if Qin Guang would do what he did to Su Lijing again. Although no one was as dark as Su Lijing, who didn't have some shameful things in life. Who hadn't been young and ignorant. What's more, the current Qin Guang was no longer what he used to be. With a wave of his hand, a privileged organization would investigate you thoroughly. God knew how big an earthquake would happen if he was provoked. So things were temporarily dragged on like this. People and forces from all sides were having headaches, but there was nothing they could do. Chapter 1082. On Zhuo Jingxi's side, she thought that since she could not achieve her goal in school, continuing to stay in the laboratory would only bring trouble to Professor Xu. She simply left the school for the time being and ran to her rented house outside the school in a daze. Hua Ling and Zhong Yu also did not want to go to other people's experimental groups. With Professor Xu's tacit approval, they temporarily put aside their work in the school's laboratory and remained as nominal graduate students. The matter of converting the 5 God-tier formulas from formulas into finished products had to be completely put on hold because of this. However, wanting her to return to the United States to plead guilty and compensate was also a pipe dream. Prince was also well aware of this. America did not have the ability to extradite such high-level talents from China. The fundamental purpose of Prince's lawsuit was nothing more than a show of force to prevent Zhuo Jingxi from completing the transformation of the results in China and turning Prince's patent into something that belonged to China. Let's not talk about international relations, but the concept of intellectual property protection must be respected. Prince's original purpose was only to force Zhuo Jingxi out of China's domestic scientific research institutions. That was all. Of course, no matter what the final result was, whether it was left unsettled or Zhuo Jingxi compensated for the losses, Zhuo Jingxi's global academic career should basically come to an end. From now on, unless China's domestic scientific research institutions quietly accepted her, she would no longer have any place in the world, especially in the field of photocatalysis. In addition, even if she could produce second-class scientific research results in China's domestic scientific research institutions, she would not have any qualifications to sign her name, let alone obtain fame and fortune. Otherwise, once the results with her name were taken to the world, it would be impossible to obtain any recognition and support. When she chose to leave the United States with Prince's samples, this outcome was destined. Originally, Prince had thought that this would be a long and drawn-out battle. He did not expect that he would be able to get the help of a major corporation in Wuxia. Zhuo Jingxi herself seemed to be exceptionally decisive. When she saw that the situation was not good, she immediately withdrew. Prince's goal was basically achieved, and Tiansong Water was even more satisfied. Song Ningyuan felt that he had completely cut off Chen Guang's escape route. No matter what he did now, after 4 months, if he could not get the support of the new photocatalyst technology, Chen Guang would know that he had no choice but to accept Song Ningyuan's offer. Letting go was the only way out. Chen Guang couldn't come up with any good ideas for the situation in the country. He sighed. Forget it. If it's too late, then so be it. Teacher Zhuo, you don't have to blame yourself. It's not your fault. If the domestic conditions can't be met, we don't have to force it. Hearing this, Zhuo Jingxi still blamed herself. She felt that she had failed to live up to Chen Guang's expectations. She sighed and did not reply. Chen Guang heard her disappointment and comforted her. Don't worry. There's still a long way to go. How about this, from now on, you prepare your own laboratory. Even if it takes more time, we can slowly spend money to buy equipment and people. From now on, we can start preparing our own laboratory. This will save you from disputes over intellectual property rights when you use the school's laboratory to produce results. Zhuo Jingxi's eyes lit up, but she quickly sighed. But this will cost a lot of money, right? Besides, it definitely won't make it in time for the Tongshan factory. Chen Guang said carelessly, don't worry, money is not a problem. You haven't seen the recent news, right? There's no harm in telling you. I'm going to make a fortune soon. Let's not talk about an investment of 1 or 200 million US dollars. Let's take it slow. We can even spend 1 billion. The 5 major formulas represent a market of hundreds of billions of US dollars. As long as we can produce results, any investment is worth it. As for the Tongshan factory, if it's gone, then so be it. It's less than 200 million. We can afford to lose it. Chen Guang silently calculated the North American box office that women might get. Based on the current situation, he was really confident. In 5 hours at the latest, he would be able to see the box office statistics for the second day of release. Without 20 to 30 million US dollars, he would be letting down his 33.8% screening rate and more than 90% attendance rate. After deducting the theater division's share, the initial 40 million US dollars of advertising budget would be fully recovered in 5 days at the latest. All that was left was profit. North American movies could be released for up to 3 months. Women had a chance of hitting $1 billion US dollars at the box office. By then, his Qingguang group would have more than 300 million US dollars. It was just enough to cover the cost of building a prince-level laboratory that Zhuo Jingxi had previously estimated. This was not even considering the domestic box office profits. This meant that he didn't need to look for financing at all. He could easily build a laboratory that belonged to Zhuo Jingxi and himself. As for the share of the distribution company that Tang Xiao opened? Sorry, no. Sometimes I'm a miser too. Okay, since you think so, I won't say anything else. Zhuo Jingxi was still a little unwilling, but she didn't insist on it. She chatted with Chen Guang for a bit more and hung up. Chen Guang also calmed himself down and continued to write. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the North American box office statistics for the second day of release were released. It was a terrifying number that could be described as historical. Only then did Chen Guang realize that he had underestimated the explosive power of the North American box office. He had only estimated the situation of women based on the box office statistics of other people, but he had forgotten a very important problem. In the past, although the box office champion of the day also had a screening rate of over 30%, the attendance rate usually didn't exceed 60%. However, today's heroine only had a screening rate of 33.8% at night, but it still had an attendance rate of over 90%. With just these 2 peak screenings at night, Women had completed a magnificent turnaround and successfully achieved a perfect counterattack on the second day of release, reaching the top in one fell swoop. Qin Guang took a deep breath and felt refreshed. Since the box office had reached the top, the second and third volumes of World School of Performing Arts would be officially released tomorrow. It would officially be the first shot that he had made at the Olympic Games. Ever since he came to Los Angeles, the old man had been low-key for too long. It was said that a kind person would be bullied and a kind horse would be ridden. The old man was in a foreign country, and based on the principle of being kind to others, he didn't fight back even when he was scolded. Did you think that he was easy to bully? You guessed what I was thinking, so you started to cause all kinds of trouble. Yes, my actions were Sima Zhao's intention and everyone knew it, but I didn't say it out loud, did I? Did I eat your rice? You messed with me on the screening schedule. Messed with me on the premiere guest. Even called on your fans and audience to boycott me? Did you really think that I was a sick cat if I didn't show my power? Damn it. It's time to show my real skills and let you see how I aim for the Oscars. Tomorrow I will openly tell all of you that I, Qin Guang, am indeed aiming for the Oscars. I am going to open the next era of the performing arts. Are you not convinced? Continue to boycott me? Can you boycott me? You are just ants in front of the wheel of history. Qin Guang reverted to his old ways and muttered all kinds of things in his heart. In fact, he had completely forgotten one thing. Although he did not openly admit that he was aiming for the Oscars, he really did not have the ability to be low-key. Finally, at 11:30 a.m. on the third day of the screening, Qin Guang let out a long sigh of relief and threw the keyboard away. After 48 hours of fighting without rest, he finally finished the second volume of World School. He waved his hand and called Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu over. He threw the USB flash drive containing the script to them and said, "Get to work, guys." At 1 p.m., the box office of the second day of screening in China was released. Women finally made a comeback and reached the top with a box office of 80 million renminbi. At the same time, the box office statistics for the morning screening in North America were released. The screening rate increased again, reaching 41.2%, and the occupancy rate was still as high as 91.5%. At 3 p.m., the freshly printed first volume and the second volume of World School were out from nearly 100 large printing houses in nearly 50 cities in America and sent to countless newsstands, bookstores, and Amazon's warehouses. Originally, Qin Guang wanted to provide the electronic version for free, but he was stopped by Fang Tianyu in the end. At that time, Fang Tianyu said, "Boss, don't be anxious. There are still 3 months until the Oscars. Just sell the book. People who want to read it will be there sooner or later. You don't have to shoot yourself in the foot. You can't go against money." Qin Guang agreed. Now that the box office had turned the tide and there were still 3 months to build up the reputation, there was really no need to burn money. Alright, it's decided. How many copies did you print? 500,000 copies. Okay, that's settled then. Tell the printing houses to prepare more copies. I personally think that the total sales in North America can reach 5 million copies. What about in China? Only 100,000 copies. Boss, you know that piracy in China is a bit of a problem, especially on the internet. Qin Guang waved his hand. You worry too much, Fang Tianyu. This is called a reference book. But I write it in a simple way, suitable for all ages. It's a reference book that everyone can read. Acting skills are not only useful for actors, but they are also useful in real life. In addition, you have to consider my popularity in China. I'm afraid my fans will buy more than 1 million copies. Of course, just considering the fan economy is still a small group. What I really need is a wider audience. Also, what others read on their phones and computers are the kind of boring online novels that I read all day long. A famous book like World School needs to be chewed on slowly and carefully. You even need to take notes while reading. If you don't buy a paper copy and hold it in your hand, you won't be able to read it. When Qin Guang said this, his face exuded the brilliance of a great man. Fang Tianyu didn't even notice that he had become a Fang Tianyu. Our boss has become a cultured man? Then boss, how many copies should we print in China? Qin Guang waved his hand. 10 million copies for the first print. Damn boss, do you have to be so arrogant? Qin Guang flipped his hair. I can't help it. I'm born to be arrogant. You go ahead with your work. I'm going to take a walk. There's nothing for me to do for now. Let me tell you, 10 million copies is just a small target. Well, forget it. It's too arrogant to call the first print of 10 million copies a small target. Let's call it a medium target. Let's go. After saying that, he turned around and left the temporary office of the Qinguang Group with his head held high. Now he felt very secure and couldn't find any reason to fail. A few minutes after Qin Guang left, Lu Xiaoyang came in from outside. Fang Qianyu pulled him over. Lu Xiaoyang, boss just said that we need to print 10 million copies in China? I feel like it's a failure. Lu Xiaoyang rolled his eyes at him. Think about your past. Think about our past. Did the boss make any mistakes in his decisions? Why is your Fang Qianyu still unwilling to be enlightened? Poor Fang Qianyu was laughed at by Lu Xiaoyang again. He muttered to himself as he went back to his office and made a call to China. After hanging up, he looked at the electronic version of Qin Guang's manuscript in front of him and murmured to himself, "Can we really sell 10 million copies of the English version in China? We deserve it." Chapter 1083. That night, as the global box office of Women started to heat up, Qin Guang's blockbuster monograph, World School of Performing Arts, shocking, 7 billion, was finally released into 2 volumes. Actually, many people had always thought that Qin Guang was bragging when he said he wanted to write a book. A person who had his first electrocution said he wanted to write a monograph on performing arts and teach others how to act? This was even more ridiculous than him wanting to win an Oscar. However, it had been 2 days since the movie was released. Although most people in the film industry still refused to enter the cinema, there was no doubt that even a blind person could not ignore the phenomenal reputation of Women. Even so, many people still thought that Qin Guang was joking when he said he wanted to write a book. Even though there were rumors that he had given away 150 copies of the so-called first volume on the day of the premiere, and that the cover of the first volume had been shown many times on major media and television, many people still chose to ignore it. Not many people thought about digging deeper into the true meaning of the 150 copies that he had given away. They had no choice but to ignore it. This guy's cover was too glaring, and they were afraid that they would be blinded. However, there were a few local reporters and media people in Los Angeles who got their hands on the first volume and were ready to write something about it. However, until today they still did not do anything, and it was puzzling. Among these people was Donald Joshtan, the most staunch and earliest anti-Qin Guang activist, and the first veteran filmmaker to publicly call for a boycott of Qin Guang in the United States. At that time, many people heard Madame Joshtan's statement and expressed their deepest sympathy for Donald's experience. It had been 2 days since the incident, and Donald, who usually appeared at the Wuxia Theater every day, had unexpectedly disappeared. His friends in the industry called him to see if he had been subjected to Madame Joshtan's domestic violence. He appeared to be in a good state of mind over the phone, and he was very excited. However, he was unwilling to tell others what he was doing. Only then did the people in the film industry feel relieved. Otherwise, they would really be worried that Madame Joshtan had been bewitched by the Easterners and would harm Donald when she returned. Old Donald had already met with misfortune. Due to various reasons, the volume that Qin Guang sent out in advance did not cause too much of a stir. In a sense, it had something to do with the huge face on the cover of the volume. But now, the first and second volumes of his book had finally appeared in front of everyone as an official publication. The filmmaker could not help but feel very conflicted. To buy or not to buy, that was the question. If he bought it, although the price was not expensive, it would still mean that he had submitted to Qin Guang and he would lose face. In addition, although it would not increase the box office of his movie or the sales of his so-called monograph, it would also be a betrayal of his integrity as a filmmaker. He didn't want to buy it, but he was curious about what kind of book it was. If he didn't take a look first, he wouldn't be able to find fault with him, and he wouldn't be able to refute and ridicule him with reason. These people in the European and American film circles hesitated again and again. Most of them finally decided to continue to wait and see. No matter what, they would scold him first. This was Los Angeles. This was the commanding heights of modern industry, Hollywood. They could not allow a Chinese person to behave atrociously here. Even if your movie was really as good as it was boasted to be on the internet, you would not be recognized by the mainstream. Didn't you want an Oscar? Didn't you want fame and fortune? Dream on. Even if those stupid fighting fanatics really brought you crazy box office, you would not be able to get real fame. Without mainstream recognition, you would not be able to get an Oscar. We are the ones who vote, not those ordinary audiences who don't know anything. With these thoughts in mind, the target of the boycott in the European and American film circles was further expanded, extending from Qin Guang's movie to his book. Unfortunately, it was of no use. Thanks to the good reputation of Women, the sales of World's Faction were doing well. That night, in major first-tier cities, especially in bookstores and newsstands near the city cinemas, when the posters of the new book had just been put up and the goods had just been distributed, consumers flocked to buy it. In addition, the big gift package that was tied to the movie ticket together with the ticket and the book was only $29.9, which was 25% cheaper than buying the book alone. It caused a frenzy of buying. Basically, the number of tickets sold in major cinemas was the same. The first batch of 200,000 copies was sold out that very night. Additional orders for the movie version flew to Tang Xiaokai's publishing and distribution company. This scene was like a new volume of Harry Potter on the shelves. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the North American box office on the third day of release was released. It was a jaw-dropping $40 million. Not only did it reach the top, but it also set a new record for a single day's box office in recent years. In fact, as early as the second day, the box office brought by the fan effect caused by the premiere guests had basically been exhausted. There was only one fundamental reason why the movie could still perform so well on the third day: the quality of the movie itself. Just as Qin Guang said to others in the beginning, when the standard of the movie was strong enough to crush all negative comments and boycotts, to surpass the barriers of subtitles and skin color, and to crush the cultural barriers between Wuxia and Europe and America, all the stumbling blocks in front of the movie would be useless and nothing to fear. What's more, the positive publicity that Tianguang Group put out to the public had never stopped. Whether you believe it or not, I first boasted until I believed it myself. It could be roughly calculated that 2 days before the movie was released, the positive publicity that Tianguang Group spread on the internet at their own expense accounted for less than 5%. The rest were all kinds of negative information and boycotts. After the explosive premiere, with the help of the many big-name guests, the positive publicity rose to 10% before the premiere ended. After the premiere, during the broadcast time of the first public screening, due to the live interviews that took place at the Huaxia Theater at the end of the premiere, as well as the influence of the impressions written by these big-name guests on their respective social media, the proportion of positive publicity further increased, reaching 15%. Later, as more and more people walked out of the cinema on the second day, almost all of them praised the movie. There were even more good reviews on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. One after another, pertinent reviews from ordinary audiences spread. Now, the positive publicity about women on the internet had almost reached more than 40%, and it was still expanding at a faster and faster pace. In just 3 days, Qin Guang even became a celebrity in the United States. Because of the cultural differences between Europe and America and Huaxia, his appearance was even more widely spread here. He was recognized from time to time when he walked on the street. Maybe it was a warm greeting or maybe it was a disdainful look, and they would spit at something next to them. But there were also disadvantages to this. He had finally stolen half a day of leisure and wanted to talk about life with a German girl, but he had no choice but to retreat. Damn it, I'm so angry, but I can't do anything bad. What made him even angrier was that Tang Ying, who was in charge of everything, actually flew back to China on the day of the premiere. Where's the jean collection? I've already taken off my pants, but you ran away first? I've only been busy for 2 days. Can't you wait for me for a while? Qin Guang felt so suffocated that he couldn't breathe. The next morning, Qin Guang went out with his head held high after a good night's sleep. He didn't need to care about the box office anymore. He raised his hand and looked at the time. It was December 28th. It was time to officially announce his plan for the Olympic Games. It's not popular to hide things like in China when doing things in Europe and America. I want to win an Oscar, so I have to be honest with them. I want the audience, the filmmakers, and the film critics to have a good first impression of the film. I want them to treat Women as a film aimed at the Olympic Games from the very beginning, so that when they watch the movie, they can evaluate what Women is relying on and how likely it is. The more the audience thinks about it, the easier it is for them to see it clearly, and the easier it is for them to fall into their own trap. It doesn't matter whether their motives are nitpicking or flattering. Whether it has the potential for the Olympic Games or not, the first impression is very important. If you pretend to hide it first and then suddenly tell others when it's time to be nominated, others will think that you're joking. At that time, the Oscar judges will already have a fixed list of nominees, and you won't even be on it. What do you expect others to do? Change their minds at the last minute? Besides, if you say it now, it'll be easier for Qin Guang to do more detailed public relations. Women was officially held at the Huaxia Theater in Hollywood at 10 o'clock in the morning. If it was a movie in the past, the press conference would have been held a week or 2 earlier. However, Women being screened in North America was Qin Guang's idea to begin with, and there were all sorts of things that happened, so the order was reversed. Also, when many media reporters received the invitation yesterday, Their first reaction was that they thought they had seen it wrong. The press conference is actually held at the Wuxia Theater? It doesn't make sense. Donald Joshtan is the #1 hater of women in North America. I heard that he regretted agreeing to hold the premiere of Women at the Wuxia Theater. There's no reason for him to agree to hold the press conference at the Wuxia Theater, right? Did Mrs. Joshtan's domestic violence escalate? Poor Donald. Otherwise, let's not care about women anymore. There are too many people trying to take advantage of this hot topic. Let's focus on another hot topic. For example, North American movie celebrity Joshtan family's tragedy. Shocking. Celebrities can also be subjected to domestic violence. Is that so? In fact, even Qin Guang was puzzled about this. He asked Lu Xiaoyang backstage, "Buttface, how did you do it?" What did Donald say? Qin Guang had a deep impression of that stubborn old man. Lu Xiaoyang had a blank look on his face. I don't know either. Yesterday, our first choice wasn't the Wuxia Theater but the Flemington Hotel. However, it was obvious that the Wuxia Theater was more suitable. I just wanted to give it a try and asked Mr. Tang for Donald's number. In the end, when I made the request, he agreed immediately and even gave us the largest conference hall. Boss, look, it's this Hugo Hall. Qin Guang was puzzled. How henpecked is Donald? Do foreigners also have bronchitis? What about the fee? Qin Guang asked. Lu Xiaoyang was even more confused. Free. Alas, Donald is so pitiful. Qin Guang let out a long sigh. He suddenly felt that this old guy was not so annoying. He was also a man with a story. Why don't we hire a psychiatrist for him? I think it would be better if you talked to Mrs. Joshtan personally. Let Mrs. Joshtan change Donald's outlook on life in a more comprehensive way. Buttface suggested maliciously. He thought that Qin Guang was going to hit him when he was down. Qin Guang nodded. That's fine. Help me find out where the community service station that Mrs. Joshtan frequents is. I'll go there after the press conference. Lu Xiaoyang took a deep breath and mourned for Donald for 3 seconds. His execution was just right and he was able to do it right away. The boss is really cruel. He is worse than a beast. I can't afford to offend him. Buttface, why are you looking at me like that? Boss, I think you have become more handsome after your hair grew back. I'm almost fascinated by you. Get lost. Boss, it's time for you to go on stage. Chapter 1084. As Qin Guang walked from the backstage of Hugo Hall to the front of the stage, the camera flashes went off non-stop. Beams of light shone directly into Qin Guang's eyes. Old Master Guang used his internal energy to protect his eyes. As he walked, he only smiled and opened his eyes, looking especially elegant. He had to make sure that every photo taken of him was a handsome man with no blind spots. He didn't want to be photographed flirting and be ridiculed online. After the reporters were done taking photos, Qin Guang pressed his hands together and gestured to the huge pile of microphones in front of him, asking everyone to be quiet. There were some familiar faces that Qin Guang had seen at the premiere or in the aisle of the Wuxia Theater after the premiere. However, Qin Guang wasn't in the mood to be interviewed by these people back then because he knew that nothing good would come out of their mouths. Everyone, let's skip the pleasantries. We'll start asking questions from the first person in the first row from the left. You can ask me all your questions about women, including why I decided to release it in the US and the guests at the premiere. I will answer all your questions except for my personal life. As soon as Qin Guang finished speaking, the guy in the first row from the left stood up. Hello, Mr. Qin. I'm Damon from the Washington Post. There have always been rumors that you're here for the Oscar. May I ask if that's true? We would like to hear a more specific answer from you. Qin Guang grinned. Good question. Thank you, Mr. Damon, for asking this question. That's right, I'll answer everyone clearly now. I, Qin Guang, am indeed here for the Oscar for Best Actor. There was a brief uproar among the reporters. Everyone had different expressions on their faces. Some thought it was natural while others were in disbelief. Immediately the second person asked, Mr. Qin, I'm Talent from the New York Times. May I ask, Mr. Qin, what do you think makes you worthy of the Oscar for Best Actor? This was obviously a nitpicky guy. Qin Guang's expression didn't change. You must be like the reporters I've met before. You've never been to a movie theater, so you don't know what I'm talking about. So how do you want me to answer you now? Next. This pitiful reporter from the New York Times initially thought that he would be respected since he's from a reputable media company, so his words were a little arrogant. However, he never expected that Qin Guang would be even more arrogant, putting him on the spot. The third reporter stood up. Mr. Qin, I'm Merlin from the Manhattan Weekly. I watched Women in the movie theater last night. I think that your acting skills are indeed epical, but whether a movie can win the Oscar or not doesn't depend on your performance alone. It has to do with the movie as well. Of the movie? In Women in the movie, other than your acting skills, Mr. Chin, there are many things that needs of the movie. So I'd like to know where your confidence comes from. Are you being overconfident? Chin Guang nodded. This guy's words were much more pleasant to hear. First he acknowledged me, then he questioned me. This was a friend who understood the ways of the world. Mr. Merlin, I don't deny that the problem you mentioned does exist. But before I left Wuxia, I said something to my employees. After all, the Oscar is for the filmmakers, not the politicians. Let's not talk about the seemingly neutral political tendency in the plot of Women. It's just a movie that tells a story. Let's refocus on the fundamental art of the movie. Let's put aside the weak points of Women and focus on my personal acting skills. My confidence comes from my acting skills. There is no other reason. After finishing his words, Chin Guang continued to look at the audience with a smile. His face was filled with calmness, but in fact, it was extremely pretentious. How could he say such a thing? This wasn't a private occasion. It was an official press conference with hundreds of reporters. Did your family know that you were so arrogant? Weren't you afraid of being beaten? Countless flashes appeared again. Countless reporters thought to themselves, we must record the most shameless man in the world. Maybe he will drown in his own saliva tomorrow. The fourth questioner followed up Merlin's question and continued, Mr. Chin, I've also watched Women. I admit that your acting skills are very good, but I don't think they are good enough for you to be on the podium of the Oscar. Chin Guang answered again, that's because you've denied me from the beginning. You've been prejudiced by the first impression. I suggest you watch the movie again. Focus all your points of view on the scenes where I'm involved in. I can tell you responsibly that you will have a new feeling. In addition, please look at the book in my hand. This is the first and second volume of World School of Performing Arts, which just went on sale yesterday. It's only $39.9 and is now out of stock. If you watch the movie with the comprehensive interpretation of my acting skills in this book, you will have a different feeling. I'll say something shameless again. Many of you people in and out of the industry don't really understand my performing arts. You don't really understand it. But it doesn't matter. You read my book first and then watch my movie. The parts that you don't understand will gradually become clear. You will find that my acting skills are like the paintings of Van Gogh and Da Vinci. At first glance, they are ordinary, but when you think about them carefully, you will find that they are full of mysteries. I can even say that the acting skills I displayed in Women, and the brand new performing arts system I wrote in World Faction, once mastered by the world, will definitely bring the current human film industry one step further and reach the next level. Let me emphasize again, the Oscar is the Oscar for filmmakers. What I will bring to this industry will be revolutionary progress. So why am I not worthy of the Oscar Best Actor? As soon as Chin Guang said this, the whole Hugo Hall was silent. The reporters couldn't calm down for a long time. Some of them had watched Women, and were serious about it. They even started to analyze Chin Guang's words in their hearts. Some of them briefly read World School of Performing Arts and then put it on the shelf. At this moment they suddenly realized something and fell into deep thought. There were also those who were completely obsessed with World School of Performing Arts. Well, even though these people had received the invitation, they were still cooped up at home or in the hotel. Of course, there were also die-hard anti-fans who had never watched the movie or read the book. At this moment they were also speechless. Originally they had prepared a lot of questions to lead Chin Guang into the ditch. There was only one purpose, which was to make him say something that could be taken out of context and cause controversy. However, they never expected that before the bait they had prepared, this guy would jump into the abyss of his own accord. They couldn't even pull him back. Then, Mr. Chin, may I ask if what you said just now can be taken as you think that the previous performing arts are just children's babbling and that your so-called World School of Performing Arts is the real performing arts? After all, there were still smart people in this world. Reporters were best at digging holes. Chin Guang turned back to look at him. Without changing his expression, he nodded and said, yes. Wow. Mr. Chin, do you understand how many people you will offend with such an attitude? I understand, but I respect my own heart and I respect my own art even more. Just as people said when they boycotted me for the sake of performing arts. I'm also crazy for the sake of performing arts. I know where I stand. Out of my sense of responsibility, I have no reason to deny my own artistic level, because my persistence is beneficial to this era. Not only did he jump off the cliff, but he also opened the ejector on his back after jumping off the cliff. He was diving down the mountain. The huge Hugo Hall couldn't quiet down again. There was no need for the interview to continue. What kind of hole was there to dig? He himself was a giant hole. We met a madman. After a long time, Qin Guang walked out of the Hugo Hall in high spirits, leaving behind a large group of shocked reporters and countless online viewers who were watching the live broadcast. Fang Tianyu and LV Xiaoyang looked at Qin Guang's back in silence. No wonder he is the boss. Fang Tianyu, look at my face. What happened to your face? Were you beaten? No, did you see a word on my face? What word? I'm impressed. By the way, Buttface, where did the boss go? He went to the street community to look for Mrs. Josh Tan. F***CK, is the boss going to hit a man when he's down? Buttface laughed wickedly. Don't make it sound so bad. I think it's more appropriate to say, hit a man when he's down. You have no idea how annoying that old man named Donald Josh Tan is. 3 hours later, the storm caused by Qin Guang's nonsense at the press conference was still going strong. People in the film industry who had been humiliated wanted to buy plane tickets to Los Angeles to kill him. As for the members of the Oscar committee who were in Los Angeles, they were even more furious. If it wasn't for them going online and discovering that Qin Guang was this year's world arm wrestling champion, along with the video of Qin Guang destroying the dynamometer with a single punch uploaded by Bonner Pierce, they would have really done it. This damn Wuxia man. Despicable. Shameless. What a clown. Do you think you can get us into the cinema by doing this? In your dreams. You won't be nominated at all. We're not interested in your *T World Pie. Many people cursed and threw the brand new copies of World Pie, which they had just asked their assistants to buy, into the burning fireplace. At about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the box office statistics in Wuxia were released. It still topped 100 million yuan in a single day. The real-time box office attendance in North America in the morning dropped slightly, falling below 90%, but it was still as high as 84.7%. However, at this moment, because of Qin Guang's arrogance, the North American film industry once again reached a consensus. These people thought that Qin Guang had touched the bottom line that they should not touch. They planned to unite, shut their ears and poke their eyes blind. No matter how terrifying Qin Guang's box office was, they would never set foot in the cinema. No matter how much other people praised his books, he would never think of reading them again. The Oscars had nothing to do with the box office. You don't have the most basic respect for people in the film industry. No one has ever won an Oscar after offending all the judges. No matter how crazy you are with the yuan, it's impossible. We, the film industry, will never bow to any power. Then, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, another piece of news made this group of people, who had just made up their minds to continue to go against Qin Guang, pee their pants. Donald Josh Tan, the man who seemed to have disappeared into thin air for 3 days, suddenly appeared. On this cold and bleak day, he only wore a tie and a pair of checkered underwear. He appeared on the street openly and was running circles around his Hollywood Wuxia theater. Oh my God. They heard that Qin Guang went to chat with Jenny Josh Tan in the morning. What did he do to Mrs. Josh Tan? Old Donald, who had a tough life, what kind of crazy torture did you go through to do such a thing in this cold winter? Look at his back, running under the afternoon sun. He looked cool but in fact, extremely miserable. His fat body and the jiggling fat looked so ridiculous, like an absurd mime. Every step he took was so strenuous. He was sweating profusely, his face was flushed and he was panting. His funny tie was flying left and right in front of his exposed chest. His Scottish-style checkered underwear was hanging on his butt with difficulty. It was slightly loose and when the wind blew, it trembled endlessly. Every time he ran a few steps with difficulty, he had to stop for a moment and pull his underwear with force. Sunlight shone on his body, causing his shadow to grow even longer. More and more people noticed this ridiculous scene. They gathered around and pointed at the silver-haired Donald from afar. Donald's friends almost burst into tears. Mrs. Josh Tan must have been bewitched. How could she bear to let her husband, who was highly respected in the entire North American film industry, do such a ridiculous thing? The stubborn Donald must have been tortured like a trial by the church in the Middle Ages for him to submit to such an extent. Wait, why is he smiling in the television? Why is the smile on his face so holy and calm, as if he had heard the call of the Lord? Has Donald gone mad? Oh my God. The Oscar committee members, who were highly respected and stubborn, could not help but feel sorry for Donald when they saw his tragic state. They couldn't help but feel terrified. If they continued to resist stubbornly like this, would they end up like Donald? Who gave this Wuxia man the courage to be so crazy? Aren't you afraid of the revenge of the Joshtan family and the Edward family? You're humiliating the two great families' faces. Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu looked at each other as they watched the live report from the LA TV station. What a bastard boss. Heartless. What a crazy boss. He doesn't know how to respect the old and love the young. He tramples on our traditional Wuxia virtues. Buttface, I just recorded it. You are doomed. *CK. Except for Tang Xiaokai, not many people knew that this was actually Donald's own choice. Chapter 1085. Jenny Joshtan also knew the truth of the matter, but at the moment she was also having a headache. What did I do? I didn't do anything. It was Donald who suddenly went crazy. What does it have to do with me? Jenny, are you crazy? How could you treat your husband like this? My dear father, I'm not crazy, but I'm going crazy. How could he do this to himself? I'll let you hear what he said just now. I recorded it. Donald's roar came from the phone. He wasn't angry but excited. Nobody can stop me. This is something I must do. Or else I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I dared to say that to the greatest performing artist in the history of the film industry. I won't be able to forgive myself if I don't fulfill my promise. You don't know how much I regret it. Father, did you hear that? He went crazy on his own. I couldn't stop him. I almost wanted to call the police. But now, everyone thinks that you forced him to run naked. It's okay. They'll find out the truth after a while. I don't have to explain myself. But you'll be known as a domestic abuser. Dear father, your daughter has been known to be a domestic abuser for years. Alright, as long as you can handle it well. The Edward family's reputation is very important. On the other hand, Donald was only halfway through his naked run when he was surrounded by people. He couldn't continue. Donald had to call the Wuxia Theater's security to push the crowd away so that he could continue. His clothes were so awkward, but in the cold wind, his face was strangely flushed with excitement. Not the slightest bit of coldness could be seen. Boss, why don't we go back? I'm afraid you'll catch a cold. No, you don't understand how I feel now. When a person has a strong heart, the cold can't invade his body at all. But boss, there are too many people here. Isn't this a little too? It's okay. When I decided to come here to fulfill my promise, I was already mentally prepared. To welcome the arrival of a new era in the performing arts, what's the point of my sacrifice? Boss, are you sure you didn't do this because of Madame's carrot and stick? What does this have to do with Jenny? You don't know how much he loves me. The security guards of the Wuxia Theater fell silent. What kind of horrifying domestic violence could make Mr. Joshtan say such things so calmly? Donald no longer cared about what the others were saying. He continued to run forward as he welcomed the sunlight. He looked like a teenager indulging himself in the sunset. I had to run faster. I had just finished reading the first volume and I had just gotten the second volume. I was really looking forward to how big of a surprise the second volume would give me. Donald did not care about how others viewed him. His mind was filled with Chen Guang's World School of Performing Arts. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that he was the one running the laps, it wouldn't have been a big deal in America. In the NBA and NFL, streaking was common. There were men and women, beautiful and ugly. This time it was because the person running the laps was Donald Joshtan, a big shot in the North American film industry. He was a celebrity, so the impact was huge. It was just like how the domestic violence rumors in the Joshtan family could be written into a book. Ordinary people were always interested in celebrity scandals. This was true everywhere. Tang Xiaokai did not fulfill his promise. Although he found out about it immediately, he did not contact the reporter from the New York Times. But talent from the New York Times came uninvited. This man had embarrassed himself at Chen Guang's press conference that morning. As a result, his reputation in the media world had declined. He was troubled about how to make a comeback, so he did not leave Los Angeles. Instead, he stayed directly opposite the Wuxia Theater in Hollywood. Now that the opportunity had appeared, his wait was worth it. The despicable and shameless Chen Guang had done unspeakable things to Mrs. Joshtan, and then Mrs. Joshtan had done even more unspeakable things to the respected Mr. Joshtan. She had forced Mr. Joshtan to run naked. This must be the biggest scandal in the entire film industry in the 21st century. I must let everyone see how shameless Chen Guang is. Talent blended in with the crowd happily. He gripped his camera and voice recorder tightly and squeezed his way forward with his tall and strong body. There were already reporters being stopped by the security guards of the Wuxia Theater. That was because Donald had said not to let anyone disturb him. Talent rushed to the front. Beside him was a colleague who had just returned in defeat. Talent thought to himself that he was a popular reporter from the New York Times. Usually, people would have to spend money to invite him if they wanted to organize something. He had been humiliated by Chen Guang today because Chen Guang was a country bumpkin from Wuxia. He did not know his identity or the status of the New York Times. But now it was impossible for Donald not to know. Therefore, Talent shouted at the top of his lungs, "Mr. Josh Tan. I'm Talent, a senior reporter from the New York Times. Can I interview you? I only need to take up a short 30 seconds. Talent's voice was full of energy. Even though there was a commotion in the crowd, his voice still penetrated through the countless noises and entered Donald's ears. Donald's running footsteps suddenly stopped. Talent was overjoyed. He thought to himself that the name of the New York Times was indeed useful. He was going to be rich. He would definitely be able to dig out some good news. Then Donald's originally fair white face turned even paler. He turned his head to look at Talent. F***ck. That Tang Zhonghua kid is so petty. Is he really going to put me on the cover? Someone come. Take him away. Put this guy from the New York Times on the Wuxia Theater's unwelcome list. Oh yeah, check his camera and phone. If they already have my photo in them, don't return them to him. After Donald finished speaking, he turned around and ran forward even faster as if there were a few wolves chasing after him. Talent's body became light, and his tall figure rose into the air. He was lifted up by two Wuxia Theater security guards who were even stronger and taller than him. I'm sorry, Mr. Talent. You have to come with us. Talent was dumbfounded. What? What did I do? Why are you doing this to me? We don't know either, but this is the boss's order. If there's any misunderstanding, your New York Times managing editor will personally call Mr. Josh Tan. No. This isn't fair. Why are you doing this to me? Why? Talent's screams echoed around the Wuxia Theater until he was dragged far away in the air. Donna didn't sympathize with Talent at all. Even he had lingering fears. **T luckily I reacted quickly. Otherwise I would really be on the cover of Time magazine. After about half an hour, Donald finally completed his feat of running naked that shocked Los Angeles. Then he mysteriously disappeared from everyone's sight once again. This time he hid even more thoroughly. He didn't even pick up his friend's phone calls. It was only when the police received a call from his friend that they directly knocked on his door to confirm his safety. Only then did his friends feel slightly more at ease. Even so, Donald's friends in the Motion Picture Association still felt uneasy. They expressed deep sympathy for his experience, and secretly prayed for him, hoping that he could walk out of the trauma as soon as possible and secretly move to another house. Everyone knew that since Chen Guang's goal was to win the Oscar for Best Actor, he would come looking for him sooner or later. Although the final selection, nomination, and voting were randomly selected in the membership system, it was still impossible to determine who would have the right to vote when the time came. However, who knew if Chen Guang, the nouveau riche of China, would cast his net wide and catch the fish, and would rather kill the wrong person than let him go? They didn't want to admit that they were afraid. It was just a rare vacation. To a certain extent, Donald's silent protest of hiding his head and not giving any explanation was also his silent protest against Jenny's years of domestic violence. Anyway, Jenny would have to bear the blame for a while. She would probably be gentler to me in the future, right? However, it wasn't just Jenny who was having a headache. The real culprit behind Donald's streaking incident, Chen Guang, was even more dumbfounded. Under Fang Tianyu's lead, he knocked on the doors of several senior members and standing committee members of the Motion Picture Association, but the results were almost the same. Sorry, sir, my husband has gone on a long trip. Madam, is it convenient for you to tell me where Mr. Ballmer went? It's very regrettable. My husband and his friend suddenly wanted to go on a trip. The theme of their trip is returning to nature. Simply put, they didn't bring their phones. Fang Tianyu was speechless. Sorry, sir, my husband is hospitalized. My father has just gone to Africa. A middle-aged woman in her 50s said, My mother has just participated in a scientific expedition in Antarctica. She will only be back in half a month at the earliest. Another middle-aged woman in her 30s said, My grandfather has just boarded the manned spacecraft Discovery. He will be spending about 2 months in the space station. In the end, Chen Guang and Fang Tianyu nearly tore this lady's house apart. You're already in your 30s and your grandfather can still go to the space station? Why don't you just go to space? Damn it, this group of people is purposely avoiding me. Their excuses are getting more and more ridiculous. Qin Guang complained angrily. Fang Tianyu comforted him. Boss, to be honest, if I were them, I would also avoid them. Although we know what you're capable of, your attitude at the press conference this morning made us feel that you were too arrogant. Actually, this isn't a big deal. We can always find people by waving our checks. However, this old man Donna did something like this in the afternoon. They have no choice but to be afraid. Boss, is it convenient for you to tell us how you communicated with Madame Joshtan? How could she do such a thing to Donnet? Qin Guang turned to look at Fang Tianyu. After a brief moment of confusion, he came to a realization. *CK. I was wondering. What's wrong, boss? I only had a simple chat with them in Madame Joshtan's neighborhood and gave them a few of my sharpening pencils. Oh no, I mean miniature sculptures. Before I left, I only told Madame Joshtan that even though Donald's personality is terrible, it's a good thing to learn from his mistakes, so I told her not to make things difficult for him anymore. Fang Tianyu's face was full of disbelief. Then the question is, why did Donald run around naked? It can't be that he likes it, can it? Qin Guang waved his hand righteously. Nonsense, of course it's his own decision. Madame Joshtan is a disgusting but kind person. Running around naked was a bet between Donald and Tang Xiaokai. Although Tang Xiaokai and I didn't take it seriously, who knows why he would care so much. If it wasn't you, boss, who said that, I would almost believe it. Scram, scram, scram. Go somewhere cool. It's annoying. Chapter 1086. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the North American box office on the fourth day was released. The figures were even more shocking, reaching an incredible $48 million. In fact, according to past experience, a new film should have reached the upper limit on the second or third day of its release. However, because of various reasons, the box office curve of Women became abnormal, so it only reached this terrifying figure on the fourth day. Everyone in Qingguang Group naturally raised their glasses to celebrate. Whether their boss could succeed in the Olympic Games or not, at least the box office had completely exceeded their expectations. From tomorrow onwards, the box office would probably show a steady decline, but it was not a big deal. According to the current situation, Women had a great chance of breaking the $1 billion mark. It would be the first Chinese film in history to break the $1 billion mark in North America. What was even more crazy was that this was a Chinese film without English dubbing, only English subtitles. Women had raised the North American box office of a Chinese film by at least 8 times from the $128 million of the second place, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. As a domestic film, the entire production team and the leading actors were all Chinese. Women completely overturned the title of Chinese films as the poison in the box office in Europe and the United States. This achievement was unprecedented. Considering the fact that the domestic box office had broken 100 million in one day, the final domestic box office should be able to reach more than 2 billion. Although it could not be compared with the once invincible phenomenon of the New Year blockbuster, The Mermaid, it was very likely to take the second or third place in history. Most importantly, unlike Monsters of X, which had rushed to 2.4 billion in the box office, so far the domestic box office of Women had almost never been fake. As the biggest investor of the film, Qingguang Group certainly deserved a crazy celebration. If it were not for the boss's strong obsession with the Oscars, everything would have been perfect in the company in the middle of the night with a stiff face and dead fish eyes. Everyone knew that the boss did not care about money, only about the Oscars. But now the matter was stuck and the boss was annoyed. As employees, they had to accompany the boss in annoyance. In terms of publicity, everyone had tried their best. In the selection process of the Oscars, the power of the US dollar was also not to be underestimated. As long as there was an entry point, the boss could give the order and everyone would be more confident. Of course, they could also use Washington's name to curry favor. However, Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang had already mobilized the entire Qingguang Corporation's 100-man team in the United States and tried everything they could. Apart from finding 2 or 3 small fries, the big shots in the American Film Association who had a say in it had all become tortoises who had withdrawn their heads into their turtle shells. Even if they had the money, they wouldn't know where to start. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning, but the boss still locked himself in his office and did not leave. The employees in the company went back to their hotels to rest, but Lu Xiaoyang and Fang Tianyu couldn't leave. Buttface plucked up his courage and knocked on the door. Qin Guang was sitting in the leather chair, looking at the computer with a serious expression. His hands were on his waist and no one knew what he was thinking. His brows were tightly knitted, and his face was so dark that it could drip water. Buttface stepped forward. "Boss, don't worry too much. We still have a long way to go. There are still nearly 2 months before the list of nominees is submitted. There will always be light at the end of the tunnel. As long as the movie continues to be popular, even if the box office really can't affect the Oscars, you will still have a good reputation. It's impossible for the jury to turn a blind eye. It's a stain on the reputation of the Oscars." Qin Guang let out a long sigh but did not say anything. Sigh. "Boss." Lu Xiaoyang was very nervous. He had known his boss for such a long time, but he had never seen him so depressed. Could it be that the blow to him was really that heavy? Things are not looking good. Didn't Qingguang Group rely on the boss's fearlessness to get to where it was today? If the boss loses his ambition first, how can we, the employees, follow him to succeed? Qin Guang sighed again and finally said, "Damn it." The national football team had lost to Iran. There was no hope for them to advance this time. Even Silver Wolf can't save us. Lu Xiaoyang was speechless. "Damn it. I thought you were thinking about something when I saw your gloomy face. It turns out you were watching the national football team." "Forget it. When I watched the national football team, your expression was even worse than the boss's. You really need a big heart to bear the blow. Speaking of which, the boss is so athletic. Why doesn't he play football? He can beat Messi and Ronaldo in a minute." "Forget it. I don't think playing football can make more money than the boss now." While Lu Xiaoyang was letting his imagination run wild, Qin Guang turned off his computer, stood up, and stretched himself. "What's wrong? Buttface, do I look like I'm down and out?" Lu Xiaoyang shook his head vigorously. "No, you look refreshed and domineering." Qin Guang grinned. Had to tell you the truth, I'm not panicking. Let's just wait and see. At worst, I can buy over PricewaterhouseCoopers and do something to the general voting." Lu Xiaoyang was speechless. He really wanted to tell Qin Guang that they couldn't buy over PricewaterhouseCoopers with their current financial resources, even with the explosive box office of Women. After all, PricewaterhouseCoopers was a century-old firm. However, Qin Guang was already walking out with his head swaying. Life is lacking in everything but money. It's truly as lonely as snow. By the way, Buttface, when you are free you can help me think of something. What should I do to let the whole world know that your boss has the most perfect body on this planet? Lu Xiaoyang's eyelids twitched. "Damn it. Can you give us a break, boss? Hold an invincible party with thousands of women in one night? Then all the men in the world will regard you as their idol." When Qin Guang was about to agree, Lu Li's voice came from the glass. "If you really do that, I will drag you out and cremate you." Qin Guang's expression didn't change. "Good choice, Buttface," Lu Li continued. "I will also cremate you, by the way." Qin Guang's expression changed greatly. "What, a bad idea. If you were born in ancient times, you would definitely be a slanderer who gave advice to King Yu of Zhou." Poor Buttface didn't know that he had walked around the crematorium quietly. He just looked at Qin Guang's back and thought, my boss has become so upright all of a sudden. At 1 a.m. the next day, the domestic box office for the fourth day was released. The daily box office exceeded 100 million, but it was a little lower than the previous day. At 1 a.m. the North American box office for the fifth day was released. It was a little lower than the previous day, but it still reached $44 million. At 1 a.m. the next day, the domestic box office for the fifth day fell below $100 million to $98 million. In the past few days, Qin Guang had tried many ways to contact some big shots in the European and American film circles who could play a role in the Oscar selection process, but he had found nothing. Donald's unusual silence after his streaking really frightened many senior members of the Motion Picture Association in the European and American film circles, especially those near Los Angeles. Qin Guang didn't know what to do about it. He planned to wait for another 2 days. If it didn't work out, he would have to ask Donald, the shameless old man, to do it. *Gimmon, you've already repented, but you still don't forget to trick me. Even if you want to streak, you should wait until I've settled the matter. Otherwise, you should wave the flag for me after you're done streaking, right? It's good that you're letting yourself loose, but don't trick me." Just as Qin Guang was vexed, the Qinguang Group suddenly received an email from China in their corporate mailbox. Qin Guang was overjoyed when he saw it. It was a secret message from Chu Zijin. Recently, the variety show of Qinguang Media in China was in full swing, but Chu Zijin was still able to take time out of her busy schedule to solve his problems. She had sent him some data that she had secretly obtained by using her expertise as the world's top hacker to break through the firewall of Demi Telecom. The data was a comprehensive analysis of the recent call records of the mansion that Qin Guang had visited a few days ago. All the call records pointed to almost the same place. It was located thousands of kilometers away, almost in the easternmost part of the United States, in Princeton, New Jersey. This bunch of old bastards, in order to shirk responsibility, they actually hid from the west coast to the east coast. They really hid far and deep. If it wasn't for the fact that I have a super hacker at home, I really wouldn't be able to do anything to you. Square Skull, book me a plane ticket immediately. I'm flying to New Jersey. With a wave of his hand, Qin Guang officially launched the Qin family army's eastbound expedition. Let's see where you can run to. After making up his mind, there was nothing left for him to do in Los Angeles anyway. Qin Guang was now pursuing efficiency, so of course he left. That afternoon he took a direct flight to New Jersey. The benefits of being the recipient of the Global Civil Aviation Association's Hero Medal were obvious now. No matter when he wanted to buy a plane ticket, he could always buy the earliest flight and it was free. Qin Guang only brought Fang Tianyu with him on this trip. All the other employees of the Tianguang group stayed in Los Angeles. The so-called mighty Qin family army consisted of 2 people, and the commander was none other than Qin Guang. Vanguard General, Tiger Leopard Cavalry, Logistics, Miscellaneous Soldier, Servant, Comfort Man, all these titles added up to one person, and that person was Fang Tianyu. Although Fang Tianyu's previous relationships were mostly destroyed, at least he could still call out his name when he met him. The 2 of them left quietly and did not make a big fuss. Even many people in the company did not know that Qin Guang had already left. It was already past 8 at night when they arrived in New Jersey. The sky was getting dark and the 2 of them quietly found a place to stay. They were prepared to go straight to the Eaton Manor where the big shots of the American Film Association were absconding the next morning. This group of big shots from the Film Association was quite interesting. They were so relaxed even when they were on the run. They actually agreed to go to a large holiday manor in New Jersey to eat, drink and have fun. This Eaton Manor had a great background. It was located on the outskirts of Princeton City, close to several universities, and had a rich cultural atmosphere. The manor covered an area of more than 500 acres. It was lush with trees, green grass and flowers bloomed all year round. The scenery was pleasant. The manor had a racetrack, an opera house, a golf course, a bar, a coffee shop, a movie theater, and other entertainment facilities. There were also dozens of detached villas of various shapes and sizes. This place was roughly equivalent to a high-end club in China, but the interior was more luxurious and focused more on enjoyment. It was filled with a strong smell of capitalism and corruption. Usually, the guests were celebrities from all walks of life in Europe and the United States, as well as celebrities from all walks of life. Even Zuckerberg, who had supported Qin Guang in the past, and people like Mouthy Cannon Connor often brought their families here for holidays. The people from the Film Association could be considered to be very influential. They even asked for a 7-story villa with more than 100 rooms for an impromptu gathering. Despicable. So corrupt that it makes my hair stand on end. Fang Tianyu sat in front of a chair and took out his Sophie tablet to search for the situation of the Eaton Manor on the internet. He could not help but complain crazily the moment he saw the bird's eye view. Qin Guang quietly took Fang Tianyu's tablet from the side and did not comment. He thought to himself, I've been set up by Donnet too badly. I'm being unjustly made a scapegoat. What's more infuriating is that I can't even scold Donnet. I'll make this bastard compensate me when I'm almost done with my business. I'll use your handprint wall. I'll have to perform a full set of the 18 dragons subduing palms to vent my anger. Forget it, these are all minor matters. I'll set off to stop them tomorrow morning. Fang Tianyu, is the car ready? We'll drive there tomorrow. Got it, boss. Don't worry about me. Boss, come and see, there's a photo of a big shot in the film industry taking a plane with 3 supermodels. It's been posted online. He must be at the Eaton Manor too. This is too shameful. 3 fresh flowers stuck in cow dung. Qin Guang silently looked at his only follower, Fang Tianyu, and sighed to himself. He thought to himself, other people take supermodels but I take a Fang Tianyu. Comparisons are odious. So here's the problem. Should I sneak in or not? Chapter 1087. After hesitating for a long time, Qin Guang couldn't bear it anymore. He didn't feel bad for Fang Ji, he felt bad for himself. That night the 2 went to bed early. Neither of them was in the mood to look at the North American box office. Of course it was in a different room. The next day the two woke up at 6 in the morning. Qin Guang immediately drove from Newark to Princeton. At around 7:30 in the morning, it was the time for Princeton's morning news. Qin Guang and Fang Tianyu stood side by side at the gate of Eaton Manor. The top-notch Lincoln that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars couldn't exempt Qin Guang and Fang Tianyu from the security check at Eaton Manor. Fortunately, the two had already used Tang Xiaokai's personal connections to get an invitation to Eaton Manor yesterday. The car also belonged to the Eaton Manor's lifetime membership. The two only rolled down the window and showed their faces. They then flashed the invitation and were immediately let in. Why don't we climb over the wall? Wouldn't we be able to catch them off guard? Fang Tianyu, who was sitting in the car, was puzzled. Qin Guang turned his head and looked at the guy sitting in the passenger seat. He was wrapped up like a dumpling in the winter after Christmas. Because your behavior is too suspicious. If we get recognized after climbing over the wall, I can't afford to lose face. Fang Tianyu was speechless for a while. After a while he said worriedly, they won't run away after hearing us, right? Qin Guang shook his head and said, not likely. We might be shameless but they are. After all, they're all famous people. It's already ridiculous for them to hide from me from Los Angeles to Princeton. I'm not a monster and I don't eat people. There's no reason for them to be so afraid of me. Otherwise, how would they be able to face others? Fang Tianyu nodded and said, makes sense. Hey, it's that old castle-like building over there. Yeah, I see it. 5 minutes later, the two of them looked at each other in dismay as they stared at the empty castle-style villa that was in a mess. Qin Guang had never imagined that this group of so-called upper-class people would be as timid as a mouse. 5 minutes ago, when their car arrived at the foot of the villa, they were temporarily stopped outside by the bodyguards at the gate. It was not until Qin Guang crushed the big iron gate railing of the courtyard of the villa and snatched away the gun from the hand of a reckless guy who tried to take out a gun in a lightning speed and learned from the trick of the fire cloud evil god that he fired at his own temple and then used 2 fingers of his other hand to clamp the bullet. Only then did he completely control the situation. Ignoring Fang Tianyu's admiring gaze, Qin Guang threw a domineering sentence at the bodyguards. Although I'm suspected of trespassing, I came to visit with good intentions. I, Qin Guang, am a celebrity in the United States. It's impossible that you don't know me. You should be able to guess why I'm here. I'm warning you one last time. Whoever dares to pull out a gun will die. The American law is a very interesting thing. Under normal circumstances, it can be manipulated by the power of money. For example, although it looks like I'm trespassing, my lawyer will also defend me in court because I'm a celebrity. If I kill someone, it should be 100% judged as self-defense, right? Then the two of them swaggered into the villa and saw a scene that gave him a headache. On the long table in the hall on the first floor of the villa was a half-eaten breakfast. Half of the bread was thrown on the table or on the ground, and the TV was still playing Princeton's morning city news. Then the two of them went straight upstairs. Most of the doors were left open and the bedding inside was still warm. This scene looked like a city that was suddenly attacked by the German Blitzkrieg during World War II. The people who used to live in these rooms and the people who were eating breakfast downstairs had fled in panic, one could easily guess. Qin Guang and Fang Tianyu went downstairs and asked him, Fang Tianyu, do I look scary? Fang Tianyu shook his head and said, no boss, you're a kind person. You win people over with your virtue. Qin Guang nodded and said, yeah, these people are avoiding me like I'm a monster. Fang Tianyu silently turned his face to the side, thinking that a walking and living fire cloud evil god was probably no different from a scourge or ferocious beast. At this moment, hundreds of people from the Motion Picture Association, who were hiding in the underground monitoring room of the villa, felt the same way as Fang Tianyu. About half of these people were neatly dressed, with breadcrumbs and milkshakes hanging from the corners of their mouths. The other half were more embarrassed. They were wearing all kinds of underwear, and the crowded and narrow and dark basement was filled with the smell of old hormones. However, at this time, the people inside didn't care about how they were dressed. Instead, they all stared at the monitor and couldn't speak for a long time. Mr. Nicholas, wasn't what the Wuxia man did a stunt we added in the movie? The Matrix? Bullet time? Quicksilver? I think he's more powerful than Quicksilver. When he shot, the muzzle was less than 30 centimeters away from his head. His left hand was still in his pocket. I told you this Chinese man is evil. Shut up. What era is this? Do you really think there are vampires and dark wizards in this world? I'm Nicholas, but I don't even know the existence of vampires. But how do you explain this Chinese man's action? Forget it, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we just hide here and don't go out. Damn it, why aren't these two leaving? Do they want to finish watching the morning news? Such asterisk T, it's so cold. On the other side, Qin Guang and Fang Tianyu were sitting in the hall on the first floor of the villa, casually picking some long bread, eggs and milk from the long buffet table. The two left in a hurry in the morning and didn't have time to eat breakfast. Now was the time to make up for it. The sound from the TV rang in Qin Guang's ears, but his eyes were on the phone in front of him. On the other side of the world it was past 8 p.m. in China. Chu Zijin had just finished a busy day and was taking a short break in her hotel room in Yanjing. But she was also a person who couldn't stay idle. She sat on the chair and typed quickly on the keyboard, chatting with Qin Guang on WeChat. Did you find them? I found them, but I can't find them. Qin Guang reported his current situation to Chu Zijin. My international friends are too rude. They ran away without even putting on their pants. God knows where they are right now. I'll have to trouble you to help me dig 3 feet underground again. Otherwise, I'll have to summon some special agents from the country. They're the best at hiding and whatnot. Chu Zijin replied after a few minutes, I know where they are. Qin Guang was overjoyed. Where? They're about 50 meters below you. The Eaton Manor's villa was really creative. They even considered extreme wartime situations. They even have something as magical as a shelter. Do you want to see what's inside? I've successfully hacked into the Eaton Manor's central control system. Qin Guang nodded and opened a WeChat video call with Chu Zijin. What came into view was a variety of colorful underwear that looked like the national flag. This group of people was surrounded in the middle. Behind them was another group of neatly dressed people who looked equally disheveled. It was a brightly lit but slightly creepy room. Right in front of everyone was a huge computer monitor. It showed Qin Guang and Fang Tianyu sitting in the hall. Ugh, so miserable. Even though Qin Guang was the instigator, he felt a little embarrassed seeing such an embarrassing scene. Friends, I'm really just here to talk. I really don't intend to do anything unspeakable to you. Don't be like this. I admit that my idea of winning an Oscar is a little crazy, but I'm not completely unreasonable. I've even written a monograph on my world-class acting skills. My contributions in the field of performing arts and my contributions in the field of linguistics are definitely on par. It's just an Oscar. Every year. Your miserable faces make me look like a big villain. That's not appropriate. Fang Tianyu leaned over. Boss, what's this? A gay film? Qin Guang looked back at him. No, it's the people from the Motion Picture Association. They're dressed like this and hiding underground. *CK. How much hatred do they have? What should we do now? Drag them out and reason with them? Qin Guang shook his head at first but then nodded. He couldn't make up his mind. It wasn't easy to trap everyone here. He was a little reluctant to let go of this opportunity. But after all, they were all so-called celebrities, especially some of them who were almost 70 or 80 years old, but they were still shivering in the cold in the shelter wearing such skimpy clothes. Uncle couldn't bear to do this and neither could Auntie. Am I really that bad? Right at this moment, a voice resounded from the television behind Qin Guang. Here's an important piece of news. Princeton Laboratory announced that the culprit of the lab sample theft case voluntarily surrendered 3 days ago and has been handed over to the Princeton police. Because the case involves a Chinese person, Princeton has contacted the Chinese embassy. After many negotiations, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Science and Technology have agreed to formally file a lawsuit today. They will sue the Chinese Zhujiangxi for theft, espionage, stealing trade secrets and many other crimes. If convicted, the Chinese Zhujiangxi will face a minimum of 5 years in prison. The trial will officially start at the Princeton District Court at 10 o'clock in the morning. Welcome to Princeton Morning City News. This is the end of this broadcast. 2 seconds later, Qin Guang shot up from his seat and yelled, *CK. Fang Tianyu's attention was still on Qin Guang's phone. He didn't hear the broadcast behind him. What's wrong, boss? Qin Guang immediately ran out. This old man must be the son of destiny. Let's not talk about anything else and let's not care about this matter for now. Let's go. Fang Tianyu jogged behind him. He was confused. What's going on? Where are we going? Qin Guang looked back at him. There was a hint of madness in his calm expression. We're robbing the execution ground. What? Fang Tianyu was stunned. He then said in confusion, what's going on? What the hell is robbing the execution ground? Like in the TV series? This is going to cause a war. Qin Guang said fiercely, I'd rather betray the Americans than the Americans betray me. How dare they sentence me? So what if it's a war? Didn't you hear the news on the TV? Zhuo Jingxi is in Princeton right now. She's going to court soon. She might be sentenced to 20 years in prison. Fang Tianyu's mind was filled with 1,000 muffled thunders. He thought, this is too big. Chapter 1088. Zhuo Jingxi did not stay in the cold detention room. Instead, she was placed under house arrest in a 5-star hotel in the center of Princeton. There were a total of 6 groups of people guarding the door. They were the legal staff of the Princeton Laboratory, the staff of the American Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Science and Technology, and the staff of the Princeton District Court and local law enforcement agencies. The last group consisted of a total of 4 Asian people, 1 woman and 3 men. The woman looked to be in her 40s. She had fair skin, phoenix eyes and willowy eyebrows. She wore a simple gray trench coat. This middle-aged woman was very beautiful, but the strange thing was that there was a murderous aura in her eyes that could not be ignored. The other 3 men all had clean, square faces. Their skin was tanned from the sun, and they looked very strong. Their bodies were filled with the aura of a soldier. Apart from the 4 Wuxia people themselves, no one else knew who they were. When they arrested Zhuo Jingxi the day before yesterday, the Princeton local law enforcement agents tried to get the 4 Chinese people to leave. They said that people who had nothing to do with the case should not be there. The 2 sides almost had a conflict because of this. However, the strange thing was that when the atmosphere was tense, the 3 Chinese men did not attack the Princeton agents. Instead, they desperately surrounded the middle-aged woman. However, the 3 men did not seem to want to protect her at all. They seemed to want to stop her from doing something. When the conflict broke out, the woman's expression did not change at all. She looked at the others as if they were dead. The 2 sides did not really fight because the Princeton officials suddenly received a call from the Pentagon. On the phone, a senior CIA official told them to exercise restraint and repeatedly stressed that this was not a simple intellectual property dispute. They could not let the suspects in the theft case be mistreated or mistreated. All trial procedures must strictly follow the rules and regulations. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. The Princeton personnel tried to find out the origins of the 4 Chinese people and the suspects. They wanted to know if they were Chinese personnel working for foreign affairs. They did not get an answer. They were only warned repeatedly not to try to provoke the other party. Even Zhuo Jingxi, who secretly flew back to New Jersey with Chen Guang on her back, did not know who the 4 people were. She clearly felt that she had left very discreetly and cautiously, and did not tell anyone about it. But inexplicably, from the moment she boarded the plane, these 4 people had been sitting next to her. At the time, she didn't notice, but after she got off the plane, the 4 of them followed her closely. The 3 men even took the initiative to help her carry her bag, and the woman came over to chat with her, exchanging some women's skin care and maintenance tips. Zhuo Jingxi immediately became vigilant. Those who were unaccountably solicitous were hiding evil intentions. At that time, her attitude was very cold, and she immediately kept a distance from these people. However, it was useless. The other party was unmoved. Wherever he went, they followed him. The only difference was that they didn't use superglue to stick them together. If it weren't for the fact that she was here to turn herself in, Zhuo Jingxi almost wanted to call 911. But later, especially after she was controlled by Prince's laboratory, Zhuo Jingxi understood that they were here to protect her. She could roughly guess that Chen Guang's status was not what it used to be, and her relationship with Chen Guang was not ordinary. Perhaps without his deliberate instructions, her personal safety must have been the focus of some people, especially after she went abroad. Sitting in the room, Zhuo Jingxi sighed again. She wanted to help him, but she didn't expect that not only would she not be able to help him, but she also caused him trouble. Prince's laboratory was too tough, and there was no room for negotiation. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have returned to America. I was too naive. Zhuo Jingxi looked at the television blankly, which was playing news related to her. She didn't know what the country thought of her matter. Perhaps it was just a flash in the eyes of ordinary people, and it wouldn't cause too much of a stir. But obviously, since the special security had caught up, this matter must have caused a stir at a higher level. She sighed again. It's all my fault. I wanted to do this too much. Although Chen Guang said he didn't care, he had already done so much preparatory work at the Tongshan factory. He even ruined the factory's reputation. How could he not care? Zhuo Jingxi knew Chen Guang very well. Although he was leaving, he still couldn't give up. That was why she sneaked back to the United States. But now she realized that she thought things were too simple. She thought that with the knowledge in the field of photocatalysis that she learned from Chen Guang, as long as she threw a little bit of bait, she would be able to make Prince's academic director obediently give in and allow her to use the resources of Prince's laboratory to produce the 5 God-level formulas. They would also no longer hold her responsible for stealing the samples. She never expected that as soon as she arrived in Princeton, she would be firmly controlled by the law enforcement agency that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Prince had no intention of communicating with her at all. They just wanted to send her to court and make an example out of her. She couldn't even meet the higher-ups of the laboratory who understood technology and knowledge. She could only deal with the stern-faced legal department who didn't understand knowledge. How could she throw out the bait? Was she supposed to talk to these uniformed police detectives or lawyers about photocatalysis? They only had one goal, and that was to send her to court. They wouldn't listen to her brag about the next era of photocatalysis. After all, Prince was a big company. Although Zhuo Jingxi was a rare young scientist, she was still too small in front of the behemoth Prince laboratory. In addition, there was a deeper reason behind Prince's ruthless actions this time. In recent years, there were many senior researchers who returned to China with foreign cutting-edge technology. The United States couldn't do anything about this. They didn't use the Chinese, but the Chinese were indeed good at learning and were exceptionally useful. As for the Wuxia people, their temperament would make it easy for them to abandon their accumulations here and return to the 9.6 million square kilometers of land after they had achieved success in their studies. They didn't care about being despised by the mainstream scientific community in the future. They only wanted to use whatever they learned. Because of this, the scientific community in Europe and the United States protested and sued, but basically all of them were useless. In addition, as China continued to rise and become more and more powerful in the international arena, the returned talents were still secretively used in the military and other high-end industries that were separated from the people's livelihood. In recent years, China had become more and more unscrupulous in this regard. There were also more and more technology leaks and outflows in the people's livelihood. The European and American industries were angry but did not dare to say anything. However, they could not use the patent lawsuits that were common in the world to crush Chinese companies. This was because China was getting stronger day by day. It was very strong in military, politics, economy, and other aspects. There was almost no bottom line for the protection of technology talents. They couldn't deal with it by force, kidnapping, or even assassinating people like they did to other third-world countries. They could only go to court. Patent lawsuits were difficult, and transnational patent lawsuits were even more difficult. Patent lawsuits from Europe and the United States to China were the most difficult. What Zhuo Jingxi did this time was actually not uncommon. It was just that her behavior was worse. Not only did she go back, but she also brought back samples. Originally, Prince couldn't do anything to her, but he didn't expect her to walk right into the trap. Because of this, as the leader of the European and American research institutions, Prince did not hesitate to use Zhuo Jingxi as a model. His purpose was to deter other Chinese researchers who were eager to make trouble, to prevent similar situations from happening one after another. The morning news ended. Zhuo Jingxi looked back at the clock on the wall. It was already 8:30 in the morning. She squeezed the notebook in her hand, hesitating if she should write down a formula in the notebook and throw it out in court. But she quickly shook her head and gave up on this idea. Prince's higher-ups wouldn't appear in court. Even if she wrote down the formula, no one would be able to understand it. She couldn't prove her innocence because she wasn't innocent to begin with. Besides, even if Prince's technical backbone was present, they wouldn't be able to understand the formula without a long explanation. Zhuo Jingxi wasn't worried about the formula leaking. Even if someone had the chemical formula in their hands and didn't know the synthesis method, it was impossible to synthesize the product by luck. Others would only treat it as their own sophistry and imagination, thinking that it was nonsense. No matter how talented a human was, there was a limit. An individual couldn't possibly be above a large scientific research institution like Prince. At 9 o'clock in the morning, there was a gentle knock on the door. Zhuo Jingxi sighed and stood up. It was time to go to court. Forget it, it's my responsibility and I have to admit it. If I go to jail, so be it. Right now, Qin Guang should still be busy with his Oscars in Los Angeles, right? When he's done and hears that I'm in jail in America, he'll definitely be furious, right? Thinking about it carefully, as a teacher, she really wasn't as mature as her student. She was too naive. Zhuo Jingxi wasn't particularly afraid. She knew that Qin Guang definitely wouldn't ignore her. All of her crimes seemed appalling, but at the end of the day, there was only one word that could solve it: compensation. The research and development cost of the samples taken away was more than $10 million. With Chen Guang's current financial resources, this wasn't a big problem. Zhuo Jingxi knew that he would definitely take care of this matter. Whether or not he paid in the end, he would definitely have a way. It was just that the more Chen Guang did, the more stupid and childish she seemed. This made her feel extremely embarrassed. In addition, she couldn't help but admire Chen Guang's foresight. If it weren't for the 4 special Chinese escorts outside the door, she probably wouldn't be comfortably under house arrest in the hotel. Instead, she would be lying on a cold iron bed in a detention center. My sister up, please. The staff of the Princeton District Court looked at Zhuo Jingxi with a smile as she opened the door. Then he raised his hand to stop the hand of another agent next to him that was trying to reach out with the handcuffs, signaling him to put it away. Zhuo Jingxi nodded and walked out first. The remaining 10 or 20 staff members were about to surround her, but the 4 Chinese people, 3 men and 1 woman, quietly stood behind Zhuo Jingxi and didn't let the rest of the people get close. The lawyer from the Princeton Laboratory's legal department saw this and was a little unhappy. However, the court staff next to him comforted him. My sister doesn't show any signs of escaping. This case itself is more related to commercial crimes. She doesn't pose a threat to others, so of course there's no need to wear handcuffs. A little further in front, the official in charge of this matter from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs whispered, Miss Zhuo, are you sure you don't need to hire a lawyer? Then I'm afraid you'll have to hire a public lawyer. Zhuo Jingxi thought to herself, ever since I arrived in Princeton, I've been under house arrest. My phone has been confiscated. How am I supposed to find a lawyer? At this moment, a Chinese man standing behind Zhuo Jingxi interrupted. The embassy has already hired a law firm for Miss Zhuo. The lawyer and the jury arrived in Princeton last night. Whatever. Zhuo Jingxi didn't comment on this. The evidence of the case was conclusive, and Princeton also had surveillance cameras. The samples that she brought back were confiscated at the time, and her fingerprints were all on them. With all the witnesses and material evidence, even if she found the legal team that defended Simpson, they wouldn't be able to prove her innocence. It didn't matter whether she had a lawyer or not. On the other hand, Chen Guang and Fang Qianyu, who had already arrived at the Princeton District Court in advance, instantly became extremely busy. Fang Qianyu, you just contacted a lawyer, right? Make it clear, I want the best lawyer in the United States. Fees are not a problem. Boss, aren't we going to rob the execution ground? Isn't that right? Then who were you talking to on the phone just now? Didn't you say that they would be here soon? The boss of the Chinese mafia in New Jersey. I asked for a few gunmen. Chen Guang, are you an idiot? If I really wanted to rob the execution ground, why would I need gunmen? I alone am equivalent to an army. Get a lawyer. Quick. Chapter 1089. Fang Qianyu hurriedly called the Chinese big shot in New Jersey. The other party was also stubborn and had a close relationship with Fang Qianyu in the past. Even though they knew that it was a robbery, they actually managed to pull out a lineup of 4 to 5 smuggled outlaws in just a few minutes. These people were also stubborn. When they heard that they were going to attack the Princeton District Court, they were not afraid at all. Then again, there's bound to be a brave man with a great reward, and that big shot knew that Fang Qianyu was working for Chen Guang. The boss also knew that Chen Guang was a rich man, and he knew that Chen Guang did not lack money. When he found a gunman, he also thought that if there was a high reward, there would be a brave man. Everyone knew that Boss Chen did not lack money, and there was no way they would lose out if they worked for him. As long as they could get things done and solve Boss Chen's problem, the world was big and there was nowhere they couldn't go. Not to mention that they were illegal immigrants. But after losing so many of his capable subordinates, he didn't dare to earn Chen Guang's money. In the end, he felt a little reluctant in his heart. Fortunately, Fang Qianyu immediately called again. He did not want a gunman but a lawyer. The boss was overjoyed. Gunmen are my profession, but lawyers are my old friends. How can people who do underground work in America not have a good relationship with lawyers? He immediately said, Brother Fang, give me 5 minutes. I have a good friend in Princeton. Okay, thank you. After hanging up the phone, Fang Qianyu thought for a bit. He did not rush to call Tang Xiaokai again. He wanted to see if the people that Tang Xiaokai found were good enough. On the other hand, Chen Guang had already run out of the court. He cursed, Mother ***, they said it was a public trial but they didn't let me in. They said I'm not their citizen. Fang Qianyu looked at him silently. Boss, this is their territory after all. Chen Guang stared at him and said, but they want to interrogate Chinese people. This is an international incident, and they are not following the rules. Fang Tianyu was speechless. He thought to himself, "Boss, you're the one who doesn't follow the rules." In fact, if it weren't for the fact that he knew that he was in the wrong, Qin Guang really wanted to rush in during the trial to get her out. He was 100% sure that even if he forcibly took them away in court, no one in America would dare to say a word. "Come on, why don't you try touching me? If the Vice Minister of Wuxia stomped his foot here, do you dare touch a finger of mine? Well, I'm not at the vice ministerial level anymore. Forget it, this was not important." Although the old man was no longer in power, his influence was still there. The most important thing was that the USA would not dare to use extreme measures against him. They did not have the ability to do so. It was just like when America's own minister came to China. Not only did he not expose his identity, but once he brought out his name, police cars lined the streets to welcome him. "If you push me too far, I can show you the power of a martial sage." He wasn't afraid of ordinary firearms, but they definitely wouldn't dare to use their killing weapons on him. The matter could only be left unsettled. Although Qin Guang was confident in his heart, he had no intention of falling out with Su Tao. Qin Guang did not need to ask why Zhuo Jingxi came to Princeton without telling him. She came for the equipment and raw materials in Prince's laboratory. She had good intentions and had the confidence to negotiate, but Prince's laboratory's reactions were too arrogant. They either didn't believe Zhuo Jingxi's words at all, or they simply hadn't communicated with her on the subject of knowledge. However, since she was here and she was wronged, Qin Guang felt that as a man, he had to protect Teacher Zhuo's feelings and fight to make her happy. This was the sublimation of the ultimate realm of picking up a girl. Not only did he have to conquer her academically, he could not let her suffer the slightest bit, and he had to take care of her emotionally. If she had already been wronged because of a moment of carelessness, it didn't matter. "You're my man, I'll get back at you. What my woman does, even if it's wrong, must be right. Even if the whole world thinks she's wrong, I must make her right." In any case, she really needed the 5 God-level photocatalyst formulas. Prince had the ready-made stuff anyway. Since Teacher Zhuo had flown over from so far away, she had to really get this done. It would give her a sense of accomplishment and make her feel that this trip was not in vain. Therefore, when Qin Guang was chased away by the court, he did not lose his temper. He asked Fang Tianyu to find a lawyer. The two waited for a few more minutes before the Chinese mafia boss called back. He gave Fang Tianyu a phone number and said that he was already on his way here. "You found a lawyer? Isn't he awesome?" Fang Tianyu nodded fiercely. "Super awesome. The partner of Baker Law Firm, the super awesome kind." Qin Guang was skeptical. "Which team is better than Simpson's team?" Boss, your request is too much. That's a dream team. Any one of them is a big shot among big shots. Although, boss, you have the financial resources to build a dream team, time is a little tight. Where are you going to find so many powerful people in such a short amount of time? But Baker Law Firm really can't be underestimated. They are now the largest law firm in the world. If you give them 3 more days, they can really create a dream team as strong as the Simpson case. Of course, there's another condition. We have to make sure that our budget is sufficient. These people are so expensive that it's like they're robbing us. Qin Guang asked, "Can they earn as much as me?" Fang Tianyu shook his head fiercely. "No. Since it's the largest law firm in the world, their connections must be good. Let's count on the people here first and see how it goes. All right, call the embassy immediately. No matter what, let's protest first. We have to go to court to participate in the trial. What's the point of waiting outside?" This was the good thing about having subordinates. Letting Qin Guang handle this matter himself would take him a few minutes just to find the embassy's phone number. About half an hour later, the two of them sat in the middle of the Princeton District Court's hall under the strong protest of the Chinese embassy. It was exactly 9:30 a.m., half an hour before Zhuo Jingxi's trial. Qin Guang was not panicking. While he had asked Fang Tianyu to contact the embassy, he had also contacted the Guangdong General Administration. The negotiations with Prince's laboratory might have fallen through, but there was still the possibility of making a big news. No matter how powerful he was still alone. He did not have 3 heads and 6 arms. It was always better to bring a few special people along just in case. When he made the call, he was completely at ease. He could not help but feel comforted by Xan Qin's reliable work. Teacher Zhuo actually had an expert by his side even without his orders. It was the leader of the Flower sect, which was relatively strong among the 27 sections. She was known as Auntie Mei. She was an expert at the peak of skin strength, Mei Shangshu. Although Zhuo Jingxi said that she had been under house arrest for more than 2 days, she had actually been served well and had not suffered any grievances. It was all thanks to Auntie May, a senior in the pugilistic world, who had lowered herself to protect her. He heard that Auntie May had volunteered. He did not know if she had too much free time in the country and wanted to go abroad for a stroll or something. Of course, Chen Guang felt that it was more likely that his charisma was too strong, which made Auntie May have the urge to worship him. In short, it was a false alarm and everything was fine. In addition, Fang Tianyu also confirmed another thing with the embassy. The embassy had also prepared a team of lawyers for Zhuo Jingxi. Although it seemed that there was no hope of a comeback, they had prepared all the information in the past 2 days. The two sides contacted each other. Lawyer Pizarro from the Baker law firm had not yet arrived, but he had already become the boss of this temporary team of lawyers. The people found by the embassy had no objections. The Baker law firm and Pizarro were both well known. They were eager to have a chance to contact Pizarro through this case. At 9:45, Pizarro did not come to the courtroom. Instead, he directly contacted the team of lawyers found by the embassy, who were contacting the defendant, Zhuo Jingxi. As expected of a top lawyer with a reputation, it took him less than 10 minutes to understand the information prepared by the defense team and come to a particularly painful conclusion in his heart. To win this case was as difficult as winning an Oscar for his employer, Chen Guang. In short, there was no chance at all. Pizarro was a little shaken. If he had known this would happen, he would not have taken this case. Although there was no agreement, if he went back on his word, it would be equivalent to offending both the Chinese mafia boss and Chen Guang. Thinking about the fate of the poor old Donald Josh Tan, whose social status was not lower than his, the lawyer did not have the courage to quit. He did not want to see the explosive news of him running around naked on the internet tomorrow. Forget it, I'll just bite the bullet and do it, Pizarro thought. At 9:55, the courtroom was already filled with all kinds of people. There were reporters, ordinary people, and even some students and professors from nearby universities came to watch the show. Some well-informed people recognized Chen Guang and could not help but be confused. Wasn't this Chinese man busy with his movie in Los Angeles? What was he doing here? Needless to say, Women was a really good movie. Mr. Chen, can I have your autograph? I'm a loyal fan of yours. Your movie is amazing. An old professor said. Chen Guang signed it for him on account of his age. Mr. Chen, can I take a photo with you? Last night, I went to watch your movie with my classmates. We all think you have a good chance of winning an Oscar. It was a brown-haired girl with big wavy hair. She was probably of Mexican descent. Chen Guang also took a photo with her because of her good looks, big breasts and good voice. Chen Guang, can I beat you up? F***ck off. This idiot was obviously a fan of William Jones. Hello, Mr. Chen, I'm a reporter from New Jersey Weekly. May I ask why you are here? You were in Los Angeles yesterday and you're in Princeton today. Is it a coincidence? You're both Chinese, do you know each other? No comment. I'm a reporter from Pan American Technology newspaper. Go away, I'm not doing interviews today. Chen Guang was annoyed and was about to lose his temper. However, the judge came in early and saved him. The judge banged his hammer heavily, signaling the people to be quiet. This was a court and they had to maintain silence. At 10 a.m. sharp, Zhuo Jingxi entered the courtroom from the side door accompanied by many people. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.